Call the meeting to order and open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming to our hearing tonight. This is the June 5th, 2019 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to remind you that, first of all, if you haven't already, please mute your cell phones. And if you address the commission at any time during the meeting, we ask that you step forward and give your name and address, and you will need to be sworn in. Roll call, please.
Rick Boggs.
Here.
Dustin Epperson.
Here.
Robert Begarow. Jerry McGowan.
Here.
Randall Ripley.
Here.
Ann Rogers.
Here.
Jerry Truex.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. We'll move on right into the agenda. We have several items on the old business section that are to remain tabled, right? This first three, A, B, and C on the list.
That's correct.
Any update on those, other than that we just need to leave them on the table?
At this time, we have no updates to provide.
Okay, thank you. So move to item D, which is the Transportation Corridor Overlay District application, TCOD 19001. I'll move that we remove that from the table so we can discuss that tonight.
Second.
Thank you, Jerry. Is there a discussion? Roll call?
Mr. McGowan.
Yes.
Ms. Rogers.
Yes.
Mr. Epperson.
Yes.
Mr. Ripley.
Yes.
Mr. Boggs.
Yes.
Mr. Truex.
Yes.
Motion passes, and that is on the table for, or off the table for discussion now. So, yeah, we'll start. Yeah, this is the, as I said, it's TCOD 1901, and start with Jack.
Yeah, so the applicant here is Mr. Jason Heidmeyer. Location is unimproved 6.88 acres east of Watkins Road, currently zoned RM multifamily residential. The applicant is requesting approval of a transportation corridor overlay district permit pursuant to section 125907A of the Pasco Code for a 42 unit apartment complex. Again, if you look at here, we have an area map with the parcel outlined here in yellow. Again, if you'll remember, there's a proposed lot split before the Board of Zoning Appeals that is represented by this red line here. The south portion is what's going to be developed. Just overall summary, 6.88 acres. The applicant's pursuing that variance to do a north lot of 2.416 acres and a south lot of 4.285. Development's only proposed on the south lot, which has 200 feet of frontage. So again, as the proposed developments within a quarter mile east Broad Street, TCOD permits required. Once approved, the applicant may begin the permitting process. Total acreage of the proposed development is 4.4 acres. Total units 42 at a density of 10 units per acre with an open space of 0.36 acres. You can look up here, we can see the overall site layout. General summary, we have 4 8-unit buildings, 2 4 units, and 1 2 unit. Here are the proposed elevations that were submitted. And just an example of the materials that are going to be used. So setbacks from the front, we've got 75 feet from Watkins Road. First section 123905C1 requires 50. Side is 15 feet, and rear is 25. Access is one two-way access road onto Watkins Road southwest, directly opposite Winteridge Drive, 780 feet north of Watkins Road in the Broad Street intersection. 1 right-hand deceleration lane and an 8-foot wide asphalt path along the frontage. Take a closer look here, we can see the access. Again, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedroom units. There is what the proposed units are to look like. So the items here are in red of what has changed. So for parking, we have 1 car garage and 1 driveway space per unit with an additional 26 visitor spaces, which is up from the previous 18 for a total of 110. Lighting, 1 porch light, 1 garage coach light. Signage, 1 sign, 32 square feet, mounted on an L-shaped stone base. The height has been reduced to 6 feet from the 6 feet 6 inches it was previously. Colors turquoise, white, and black. Externally illuminated north side of the entrance drive, about 10 feet outside of the right-of-way. Here is the proposed signage and the location here with the sign highlighted in red. Landscaping, so 45 trees are proposed to be removed and 103 trees are being replaced. They would like to utilize the existing vegetation to the north as screening. And for the screening types, we have L2. Here is an overview of the landscaping on the front portion of development. And here is the overall landscaping plan. Again, all over the landscaping, we have the L3 type and the L4 type. This is the proposed fences they would like to do. Here we have just a quick outline of what screening is going where. So we have L4 in the red along the border with the properties just to the north, existing vegetation on the far north, L3 along the east and south border, and L2 at the front entrance. So pursuant to section 1259.05B, the Planning and Zoning Commission does have the ability to waive certain requirements, those being setbacks on landscaping and screening. So the applicant has requested a waiver to use the existing vegetation to the north property line. And these are all comments from the previous March 6th hearing, so I won't dwell too much on these, but they are available here for reference. Future land use map designates the property as high-density residential with an open space corridor. So high-density residential pursuant to the comprehensive plan in 2006 is single-family structures at 3.0 units. So if we're using that, then this is not in line with the comprehensive plan. However, the property is already currently zoned RM multifamily residential. So just again, some more comments here. We have them in case we need to go back to them, but we won't spend too much time on them. So these are the comments that we have for the hearing today. So for planning and zoning comments, the number of visitor parking spaces was increased from 18 to 26. However, staff still does have some concerns with parking availability. So the amount of parking spaces they do have is compliant with section 1291.16. However, as the project is subject to the TCOD pursuant to section 1259.05G3, the parking requirements shall be approved with modifications, or disapproved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the applicant stated in the previous hearing that there were 17 two-bedroom units and 25 of the remaining units are to be three-bedroom. In the worst case scenario, 3 of these units could be filled with those 25 three-bedroom units could be filled with 3 adults with 3 separate vehicles, leaving 25 of the 26 available parking spaces occupied. Also, there's concerns that items may be placed in the garage, preventing the parking of a vehicle within. We do have some additional concerns that if occupants must shuffle their vehicles to get in and out of the garages, some of them may choose to just park in the visitor spaces. And if residents have visitors over and there's no spaces to park, they may begin to park in other areas, which can create access problems for both private and emergency vehicles. So, and the plans also do not account for any ADA compliant spaces which may be required. And pursuant to section 1291.11, the parking space dimensions for 90-degree parking shall be 9 feet by 19 feet. The plan stated they were 9 feet by 18 feet. So, the following comments here from the March 6th hearing have been satisfied. The first one being the proposed sign exceeds the 6-foot maximum height limit. They lowered it from 6 feet 6 inches to 6 feet, so that is now compliant. And 2, we need some clarification on the tree replacement. Out of the 5 species that were listed in table 1283.03-02, there's only a total of 53 replacement trees that would count towards that when 98 were required. However, they did revise the plant schedule to include 8 native tree species from the table, 4 total of 103, which now exceeds the required amount. The following comments have not been addressed yet. So number 1 being the proposed lot split requires variance. However, that variance is before the Board of Zoning Appeals. 2 being the details of dumpster enclosure were not provided. 3, the open space area meets requirements. However, no details of the required recreation equipment were supplied. 4, proposed utilities are underground. However, staff would just like to see an additional note added to the plan stating so. 5, the applicant has provided an 8-foot wide asphalt path. However, staff believes the fee and lieu would be more appropriate in this location. 6, the applicant will need to request a waiver to utilize the existing vegetation to the screening as the north. However, in the most recent submission we have, they did request that waiver, so that has now been added. And 7, the site data table lists the acres as 4.4. The survey for the variance that was requested gives the acres as 4.285. We just like some have some additional comments for this hearing. And first one being increased parking space dimensions to 9 by 19 as required by section 1291.11. And 2, include distances between the proposed buildings, include the elevations for the proposed 8-unit buildings, and include numbers for how many 2- and 3-bedroom units are going to be in the data table. So the applicant did submit some updated plans that were submitted on May 31st. However, staff has not had a chance to opportunity to review these yet. So these are some additional comments that were submitted by different departments within the city and some other agencies. So from the city engineer, they had the comment that the project application lists 44 units, whereas the building data provides 42 units. As you remember, the last hearing, it was said that the commission would like to see a traffic study, so they did supply us a traffic study, which was reviewed by the city engineers. And so per the traffic impact study that was done, for the conclusion, no roadway improvements are required with the current development. However, the preliminary plan does indicate the addition of a right turn lane into the development. They do not have any objections with these improvements, as they will provide an extra layer of safety. Their full comments are attached there to your staff report. The public service director commented that the construction plans are to be reviewed upon submission, and that is believed that with the inclusion of the right turn deceleration lane, it will satisfy the requirements of section 1259.05A3. Again, his full comments are attached there to your staff report. So the utility director will require an 8-inch main run through the development and connect to the 10-inch main on the west side of Watkins Road, and the 8-inch fire line is currently a stub on the end of Richmond Drive and Jefferson Meadows. 2, will require a building to have 1 tap for water and sewer and 1 meter for billing purposes. However, sub-metering to each unit can be done privately. Again, his full comments are attached there in your staff report. So from the fire district, we only received 1 comment, that being that the project meets our regulations in the Ohio Fire Code. Therefore, the fire district does not have any further comments at this time. We did receive 2 notifications from neighbors. We received an email from Mr. Davis. It's attached there to your staff report. He was opposed to the project, and we also received a letter from Mr. Robert Sexton. The letter is provided there on your dais, and he is also opposed to the project. So surrounding properties to the north, it's actually, we have Harrison Township, so it's outside of municipal limits. But in Harrison Township, it's zoned agricultural and B1 business district. The current land use to the adjacent north is a dog kennel. To the east, we have it zoned RM multifamily residential, which is the Jefferson Meadow condominiums. To the south, it's zoned GB general business, which is currently vacant. And to the west, we have some more Harrison Township zoning of agricultural. And inside the city of Pataskala, it's zoned R7, and that is currently single-family homes or the Barrington Ridge subdivision. If you look here, you kind of get a graphic representation of what the surrounding zoning districts are. All this lighter green here is multifamily. Anything that's not colored in is Harrison Township. The blue here is general business, and this sort of transparent white here is the R7. So we do have a couple modifications that the commission may choose to approve the applicant's request with. The first one being the applicant shall obtain all necessary permits from the city of Pataskala and the Lincoln County Building Department prior to construction. 2, being the applicant shall address all comments of the planning and zoning staff, the city engineer, public service director, and the Pataskala Utility Department. 3, the applicant shall submit a complete set of construction plans, including stormwater calculations for review and approval by the city engineer and the public service director. And 4, being the planning and zoning commission shall waive the screening requirements for the north property line. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Jack. I'll start with one. If the parking spaces are extended by a foot on either side, that will narrow the street, the private street. Is that still sufficient width then?
Well, I'll check on it and get back to you on that.
All right, I'll move on. Rip, you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. This is for Jack.
Yeah, this is for Jack. I noticed it went by fast and maybe I misread it. But I think in one of your very first slides, it said it's not in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Now, is that still the case, or do you need to review the revised?
So the current comprehensive plan that was done in 2006 identifies this area as high-density residential. So per that plan, high-density residential is single-family structures with a net density of 3 units per acre. So going by that, it does not comply with the comprehensive plan. However, it is currently zoned multifamily residential, which is a permitted use.
It doesn't comport with the,
It's not in line with the comprehensive plan.
it's out of sync with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Anything else, Rick?
No, that-
Jen?
that caught my eye.
Okay. Darren?
No question.
Okay. Jerry?
With the original plans that were approved for that area and never completed, do we know exactly how many units, or was there any finalized drawings or anything, or do we know how many units were already approved, but just never finished with the original?
That was supposed to be, if I recall, it was supposed to be phase 7 of the Jefferson Meadow condominium complex. I think there was the downturn, so they never got to 7, and phase 6, which was the ones out closer to, Broad off, I think it's Monticello Court, I think. Those are completed, and that was it. When it was originally annexed into the city, they had, they zoned it all to multifamily, and there was to be no more than 5 units per acre. I think with the current Jefferson Meadow configuration as it is, they're at about 3 units per acre. With this proposal, it would put the whole annex portion, including Jefferson Meadow and the property in question this evening, at 4.75 units per acre. I don't know, I think it was to be approximately 24 units in phase 7 of Jefferson Meadow.
In terms of the right turn, do we know where that's going to begin, or has any of that was any of that depicted or anything when they talked about putting in the right turn? Is it gonna start all the way from Broad and work its way up, or any idea on the right turn?
It wouldn't start at Broad, however, typically that would be, it's indicated on the plans, but the specifics would be determined with the construction drawing.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thanks. Dustin?
Mr. Boggs, and then to follow up on your question with the additional arguably 2 feet to, it would not create an issue with meeting the code in terms of the internal driveways.
Okay, thank you. One other question for Jack, those additional guest parking spaces, did you indicate where they were added? I know on the plan we have was, they don't show those additional spaces.
So they added, I believe it was 2 here, and then either 1 or 2 here. They also added some additional in the rear here, and then I believe right here, they added a few more.
So some would be near the
They're kind of
dumpster
dispersed
location?
throughout.
Yeah. I think the third group you pointed to is, if I'm looking at it correctly, it's near the dumpster location? Or it's
I
behind
believe,
it,
yes,
maybe?
directly
Okay.
behind the dumpster,
Okay.
to the north of the dumpster location.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, thanks. Next we'll have the applicant. Give them an opportunity to give us an update. And do you anticipate Mr. Heitmeyer addressing? I know we got a speaker request from him. You're not, it's not part of your presentation?
No, he's not part of mine, but he could be his own, I'm not, no.
Okay, all
We'll
right.
work together.
All right. Do you swear that any testimony will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
I do.
Thank you.
The matters that Jack was pointing out,
Name, address.
oh, my
for the
name and
record.
address. I'm Connie Klima, and my address is P.O. Box 991, Pataskla, Ohio. The matters that he was pointing out on May 3rd, last Thursday, May 30th, we submitted a check sheet that you probably have a copy of, where we addressed all of those outstanding matters in the 9 by 19 parking areas. some of the, just the typical things such as the 4.285 acres, all those things were corrected and submitted. I understand they haven't had time to review it, but those all have been addressed. And we have no issue with the additional parking spaces creating any aisle width issues or anything of that sort. I am aware of the fact that we have numerous people that are here tonight to speak about this project. I was at the prior hearing for a different matter and heard one of the things that I know you are aware of, but I want to stress before speakers take their places here, is that this is a TCOD review. It's not a zoning review. This property is zoned RM. In fact, when it was annexed, there was not an RM zoning in the city of Pataskala, but there was an R5, and it was R5 zoning at that time, which was 5 units per acre. And then later on, the city itself is the entity that did some mass rezoning, as you probably recall, and changed some of the zoning code, and the RM was placed on this property. The RM permits 10 units per acre, but as Scott was saying, with the annexation of this in the ordinance, it talked about the full acreage, not exceeding 5 units per acre. And as this project is now proposed, the site will be less than, the property in its whole as annexed will still be less than 5 units per acre. And as a TCOD review, the TCOD code itself states that all permitted uses within an underlying zoning district shall be allowed within the TC. So the issue of whether or not this is an apartment or how many units, unless it was exceeding the density, is not an issue tonight. The issues here tonight are the things that are reviewed in your TCOD, such as parking, setbacks, those types of things that are actual functioning of the site itself and how it relates to the purposes within your TCOD code. I'm going to be ready to address any comments and summarize some of the questions.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, questions for Bonnie on the application? Ann? Darren? No. Jared?
Just in terms of the parking, where did you take the space away from to get the extra space? Where was that? Just do you know exactly?
Well, I'm not the designer, but I know that they were able to use some of the spaces that probably would have been more adjacent to like the dumpster in some areas where they knew that they could fit in more spaces. They considered some of the concerns and thought that having additional parking was a good idea. In fact, with this plan, we now have 62% more than what's required by the code.
The one other thing too that was brought up was the bus turnaround. Was that looked at?
What we did is actually, we on our own actually looked at bus stops and bus drives on Watkins and other roads such as Broad Street, State Route 310, where buses stop in highway areas. We have no real concern about that. We don't believe that given this site that is an issue, and we've had no evidence provided to us that that's an issue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No more questions?
Dustin? I'll come back to me, Rick.
Yeah, I know in some of the past proposals that you've been involved with or represented the principal, you've tried to work out, or you and others have tried to work out agreement where you can find it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to find,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we'll hear yet again some very passionate and well-reasoned opposition to aspects of this project. And I'm just wondering if it makes sense to you to have set up a meeting somewhere with you and Mr. Heitmeyer and other principals and residents, nearby residents who are interested in the project to see what can be worked out. Because I'm reluctant to set up a civil war within Pataskala.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's a thought.
It's a wonderful question. And I thought about that after I was here and heard some of the comments. I guess my first concern was, and I think I showed that rather passionately also, when a neighbor tried to rezone the property, and then council considered rezoning the property. And I guess I started thinking about, and I even said this to, and know many of the residents, personally, and talked with them. And my concern was this, that this property is zoned RM, and it has been always zoned RM for many years, obviously. And the right to have apartments has been there for many years. And what people were really opposed to, I guess, was the fact that apartments would be there. And apartments is a permitted use, and so many people have given apartment living, basically stated that all kinds of bad things can happen. And I guess what it is that I disagree with that. And I disagree that a person should not be permitted to use their property as zoned. I also look at the sites when they say it's a bad area for it, and as Jack pointed out, the frontage of all of this property on Broad Street is zoned for business. The property to the east of it is zoned for multifamily and is multifamily. It's condominiums, but it's multifamily. That's how it works. 4 units a building, 1,300 square foot units. I believe that people live in apartments just like houses. Some are bad, some are good. Some take care, some don't. Apartment complexes have a bad name in some areas because there are some areas where they're bad, but so are many single family houses in bad repair. So when you're talking about meeting with a group that literally just does not want an apartment, people living there as apartments, there's not much give. If there was more give about basically buffering and those types of things, I would totally understand. But at this point, I've not seen anything except in opposition to what this person has a right to do with this property. So, that's that. Thank you.
Anything else? No? I did have a question for you. You talked about the density, and you kept referring to the whole property, but there is also a pending lot split application with the PZA.
Mm-hmm.
If that is split, then how does that affect the density?
Well, we'll make certain that it's not going to, if it was split and to be used for a single family or just an open lot, we would make certain it would comply. We would have to.
But I mean, the density of the remaining, the current property that we're talking about tonight, what would that?
It will not affect it because it won't exceed what is generally over the whole thing, 5 units per acre.
Okay. Do you have any comment on that, Jack or Scott?
I don't have that information offhand, but I would be glad to go find that out if you'd like.
Okay. Well, does Commissioner like to know that, or?
I think it would be nice.
I guess what I'd like you to know is that we would be, I mean, you can make that the condition that it can't be used to exceed what's going on and what's permitted on this side.
Okay.
Because that's not the intention at all.
Okay. And one other comment too, the information that was submitted last Friday, we did not get that, so
Okay.
we've not seen it.
Okay, it was submitted though. As soon as we got the report, we submitted it.
Right, but as staff indicated, they did not have time to prep to review it and get it out to us, so.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I just wanted you to know we did submit it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, now go to public comment time. I got a stack of speaker request forms. Before we start that, I believe last time we had a 3-minute speaking limit, and I would propose that we implement that as well tonight. Any objection to that? I don't see any objection. 3 minutes, and Jerry will be our timer, and so you're going to indicate when the time's up,
Yes,
or cut the person?
well, the alarm will go off. The only thing we ask is that you finish your thought in your sentence and then stop so that everybody else gets a chance to speak. Don't start a whole nother topic, that's all.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna do this in groups, and I'll apologize in advance if I mess up your name. You can correct me, because when you step forward, you do need to give your name and address. So I'll swear 5 in at a time. Jason Heitmeyer, Barbara Bice, Jana Davis, Gary Sunderman, and Robert Sexton. So if you'd all stand, I'll swear you in.
Mr. Boggs, you can add another because Jason does not want to speak.
He does not want to? Okay, thank you. Tim Barrett. Okay, do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Barbara Fife? Oh, I guess I should have said too, that, you know, what you said, if you were here before, at the previous meeting, if you spoke, that's all part of the record. You don't have to repeat everything, and you also don't need to repeat everything. If somebody else has said that, you can say, I agree. So, again, as Jerry said, trying to keep the process moving so everybody has a chance to speak. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I live at 5419 Watkins Road, 3 houses down from this proposed apartment complex. I'd like to state that back in February, when I came to the first meeting, when this process began, there was a lady who wanted to park several big trucks on a property she had purchased. The neighborhood in question didn't look as refined and nice as ours does on Watkins Road, but her request did not meet all the items, you had a list at that time, published, that each of us had a copy, required for the approval, and her request was denied. From the beginning, the building of all these apartments didn't meet all the items required for approval, so I don't understand why it's gone on so long. It doesn't fit with our neighborhood. It would reduce the property values of our homes. Not only would there be a huge number of potentially transient people, but if you own your own property and pay taxes like we do, you tend to take good care of that property. There would be no way to control the number of people in the apartments and their cars. 80+ cars added to our neighborhood would be a disaster. The school system is already overcrowded and they are against it. Last week's article in the task list standard said it well. The whole community is against it, and the only person to benefit from this building project is the builder. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Shanna Davis. I'm the property owner at 5419 Watkins Road in Pasco. Council members. So I've attended all the meetings regarding these proposed changes, including variance and the TCOD before you tonight, to the property owned by Mid-Ohio Development that surrounds mine and many other properties in the area. As you know, this has all created enormous concern to myself and the entire neighborhood. We all chose to purchase homes here and have worked hard to maintain and improve our properties for our quality of life and financial futures. Personally, I've sunk everything I have into this property and have counted on it to be of value to maintain and grow the neighborhood. I'm sure you have the same expectation of properties that you own as well. I'm not a wealthy person, and being a single woman, this represents an investment in my future that's irreplaceable. What's being proposed in this neighborhood is absolutely a disaster for all of us. I'm sure you realize this. I've heard all the arguments for and against, and there's definitely no argument that could justify the approval of these proposals. The neighborhood is being designed for single family and should remain that way. You have a duty to protect the good taxpayers and residents of this neighborhood and put their faith in Pasco as a wonderful place to own a home and raise families. Even the Pasco City School System is against this horrific proposal for many good reasons. Mr. Heitmeyer is an opportunist that is purely taking advantage of the situation and literally doing everything he can to say and get what he wants, which is a steal on a piece of property. He wants to maximize every inch of his own property. He has absolutely no regard for anyone he's hurting to get it. The fact that that all this information has been twisted regarding Mid-Ohio Development proposed many years ago, and later promises to be forgotten speaks to the very reason that we're also terrified of this taking place. Once a builder gets what they want, they can do anything that they want to do, and there's no one to police every nuance of their business as it affects the neighborhood. So as for apartment buildings, we all know they do attract transient individuals that don't care for the neighborhood. Apartment complexes, after a few years of wear and tear, attract even less quality dwellers, and the spiral goes down from there, raising crime, noise, and unwanted traffic. I know for a fact that not one of you, including Mr. Heitmeyer, would want this situation next to their own homes and families. The proposition is abomination and eyesore to all homes around. And there are many other places more suitable for this type of business, not smack in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Sunderman.
My name is Gary Sunderman. I live at 652 Monticello Court, Pataskala. And in reviewing the staff report online, Miss Janet, get her name now, but what she just read was part of that report as part of the public comments. The only other thing that was in the report as public comments was a couple of copies of things I submitted when I first spoke of how I thought 2-unit condos could be put on that land, and that they would fit very nicely. I showed 8, but I think 10 would fit very, very nicely. That gives you, basically 20 people or 20 residences there. Also, in the zoning code, in part 1239.01, it says the purpose of the RM district is to permit the establishment of high-density youth multi and 2-family dwellings. The RM districts are associated with those areas with primary direct access to arterial roadways. Now, since the owner of the land decided not to build any more condos, and that cuts off that piece of property from access to Broad Street, which is the only arterial highway. Now, if they're going to use that land and keep that zoning as it is, then they're going to feed into Watkins Road, which is just a collector road, not an arterial. And they're feeding in the maximum number of occupants that they could possibly get on there. I think that's something that needs to be considered. I also I know that the developer is trying to meet every, dot every I and cross every T. But here's the thing: these 8 units, which you didn't show, and I know you've requested the 8-unit elevations. There's all kinds of fencing, vegetation and fencing, which is not really sound deadening fencing. It's just overlap, board over board. But you got the first floor of these units, which all the rear faces those 3 lots to the north. You got the first floor all fenced in and trees and bushes and all that. And so the people that go out on their, and I'll finish here, but the people that go out on their patios can party and whatever they want to do and not have any interruption from the neighbors to the north. They have privacy. Now, you go upstairs in these units and look out the back window. You got 2 8-unit apartment buildings, the rear facing these 3 properties to the north. You got 2 window openings minimum in each apartment. So you got about 16 invasions of privacy, visual invasion of privacy possibilities there. And that is just ridiculous. For the developers thing, he could just not put windows in there, and that would solve part of the neighbor's problems and save them a ton of money. So, put condos in and just save everybody.
Thank you. Sexton.
Mr. Chairman, members of this commission, I'm not going to read the long letter I sent you already earlier, but I will do a couple of recaps as to what my state of mind is in terms of your ability to deal with this in a way that what we feel is best for the community. The first question I looked at was whether you had the authority to reject this. And I believe based on the concerns of the staff with regard to parking, you do have the ability to reject it. So the question then would get down to, are there other reasons that it would make sense? So for example, I understand that how the property is zoned is not in coordination with the comprehensive plan. By law, it doesn't have to be, but that's a factor for you to consider. When the residential plan that's in the comprehensive says that there should be no more than 3 units per acre, these guys are saying, well, when you take in all the acreage, we're right around 4. But the truth of the matter is, the property they're building on, we can all do math, it's 42 units across 4.8 acres. That's darn near 10 units per acre. That's what it is. Now, if you factor in the wetland where they're not going to be able to build, or you factor in the land to the south, which is not theirs anyway, but it is part of that same zoning, then sure, you can make your math look like the comprehensive plan. But the truth is, the building project itself is in contradiction to the comprehensive plan. That doesn't mean it's against the law, but it is something for you all to consider when you think about this, and the fact that whether you want to exercise your authority with regard to the parking issues. The school district came in here in the last meeting and they really laid down some serious concerns. You're not required to consider that concern when you take this vote, but you certainly can take it under consideration. When those buses stop on Watkins Road, they're not going to pick up 3 kids. I can't tell you how many they're going to pick up. It might be 30, it might be 40, it might be 20. It's not going to be a little bus stop. When you have 42 units, you're going to have a lot of kids getting on and off buses on Watkins Road. The traffic study issue is really troubling to me, and this is an area that I'm outside of my authority on. My only authority is that I can literally see the area where we're going to build. I didn't see any traffic strips across the road. I didn't see any cameras. And I darn sure didn't see them when school was in during the high traffic areas of the day. So I question how they could come up with a finding that says that traffic won't be a concern, when very clearly I live there and see the traffic that goes on there every day without the 42 units. It's obvious that this project doesn't match the existing character of the neighborhood. Now, a minute ago it was said that, well gosh, there's multifamily units just to the east with the condominiums, and it's business just to the south. But if you actually stand on the property, if you actually stand where I live, if you look to the south, there's a great big rise. You can't see Broad Street. You can't see what would be zoned business. When you look to the east, where the condominiums are, I can't see them because there's a great big woods there right now. The truth of the matter is, this is not a property on Broad Street. It's a property on Watkins Road. And Watkins Road between Broad Street and Hollow Road is 1.7 miles. 1.7 miles without a single multifamily dwelling along the entire stretch. Every property on Watkins Road is a large lot property. Now, Barrington Ridge is across the street from us, and they're not 1 acre lots, but they're not on Watkins Road. And they are still single family houses. So in summary, I'd say this. If you do a little score sheet in your head about the net value of this project, the school has heartburn, the neighbors have heartburn. There are legit concerns about whether you could turn a fire truck around in there, or a trash truck around in there. There's only one way in and one way out. In every way possible, it just doesn't make sense. Now, it is zoned in a way that they could do it.
Time.
I'm out of time.
Yep.
But I believe you do have the authority based on those parking issues that would allow you to take that action. And I believe you know in your heart that's what the community would be served best by. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Barrett, 575 Richmond Drive, Pataskla, which is one of the condos, in fact, that actually borders what would become this development. I would say to all of you, if I heard right, I think Ms. Klima attempted to intimate that all the residents surrounding this proposed development somehow have a bias or prejudice against apartments and apartment dwellers, and I don't believe that's so at all. I believe that many of us began in apartments before we had our own houses. By the letter of the law, Mr. Heitmeyer does have the right to finally purchase when he gets approval by this board or onto the council under the current zoning, which includes apartments, to build. That's by the letter of the law. I'm not going to reiterate what a couple others have already said. I just will say the City of Pataskla back in 2006 did look at the overall plan and say, you know what, we understand that. We think it really should be about 3 single-family residential units per acre. This is way beyond that. The spirit of the law, and particularly when you look at some of the, and I know you're not the Board of Zoning Appeals, one of the things they look at, does this fit within the community that is currently there? You have to say, as the overwhelming majority of folks in this room, absolutely not. Apartments fine. Is this the place for them? No. So I encourage you, if you do move on this motion, that you move to disapprove the TCOD for this particular application. Thank you.
Okay, the next group, Mark Van Buren, Eric Smith, is it Eric Bonner?
Yep.
Looks like, okay. Drew Clark, and looks like Raymond, who?
Raymond, 4.
4. There's no R on this, but anyway, so the 5 of you, you'd stand, and I'll swear you in. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mark, we have your own first.
My name is Mark Van Buren, address is 4832 Keller Road, Hebron, Ohio. Zip code is 43025. What I want to start out with, and we hear this all the time, it's RA zone, it's RA zone, it's RA zone. But the fact of the matter is, if that parcel was not connected to the condos, it wouldn't have been zoned. And the reason why, like the gentleman said, and I want to say it again because this is important. The fact of the matter is the RM districts are associated with those areas with primary direct access to an arterial highway. This no longer is that, because developers came in here and said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put in these nice condos. And then they sliced it. And now they're giving you a parcel that dumps out into a minor collector, if I'm correct. There's a reason for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's called traffic. Look around Pataskla and see how many interchanges that you're out trying to get grants for to make improvements. Now's a chance to sit back and say, no, we have to study this interchange. And to sit there and say that you're going to combine these apartments with the condos and then do your math to say what the density is, that's wrong. That's a separate project. That's separate parcels. The next thing I want to talk about is we talk about you can't say no to them. But the Transportation Corridor Overlay District is to provide requirements to ensure existing and anticipated corridor land uses and traffic improvements. You have the right to say no to this if there's no traffic improvements that you think is right. And when I say this, the bigger issue, nobody wants to talk about this, is the business south of there. You have over 8 acres zoned business. Where in the world are you going to bring the traffic out when they come in front of you? there's not a stub street or a service road. You have 750 feet from that road down to Watkins Road on a hill. Now, there's a gas station goes in that corner, convenience stores. Where's that traffic gonna go? How in the world are you gonna stub that out on Watkins Road? Within only 750 feet, that doesn't even meet your driveway requirements, I don't think. All I ask you to do is, right now, Watkins Road and Broad Street is empty. Pataskla, along with Harrison Township, we can sit back and we can design that interchange and make sure we have access points where traffic's not being backed up. If you approve this tonight, it will be a mess. It may not be a mess in the next 10 years, but when you have a developer come in and want to develop south of there, that land, and you don't have an access point. And what's interesting is, if a developer comes here and they want to do a subdivision, Jack told me a lot of times they ask him to put in a stub street. Nobody asked them. And with that, you can talk about safety issues, and I'll be done in just a minute, please. Talk about safety issues. The school was here and said it is a safety issue parking that bus, picking kids up on Watkins Road. I wouldn't want my kids to have to go out there on that traffic. So just please look at the access points. You have the authority to do that. To me, it's responsible, because it will be a mess if you approve these apartments without thinking about service road. Thank you.
Eric Smith.
Eric Smith, Harrison Township trustee, 7890 Blacks Road. I'm gonna reiterate everything Mark said. I'll just say ditto. The math is fuzzy. The math is fuzzy on the whole parcel. We should be looking at this parcel on its own, and it does not meet the 5 or the 3, whatever the number is. It's 10. Again, service road, impact to Watkins is 16. Does not meet the comprehensive plan. You know, I would say to the zoning department and Scott and some of the others, you need to be looking at some of these zoning classifications that are already existing and be proactive instead of reactive. You know, you should have had a grasp on what was coming, but you may want to look at some of your other multifamily zoning and get a grasp on it before you have another case like this come before you. But again, I'm going to reiterate what Mr. Sexton said. The math is fuzzy, and the numbers just don't add up. So it's in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Eric Fauner, 667 Ford Pass, Pataskla. I'm a Harrison resident as well. There's been a lot of things set up here today, and I think you guys got a lot of information. I'm not going to sit here and reiterate it, but there's a lot of people in this room, along with Pataskla residents, Harrison Township's here. We've heard and talked to the school board. We need to look at this as an overall plan and really think about what it's going to do to the community. I mean, we're taking a piece of property, granted it's there to buy and to build on. We're shoehorning something in there because we can just jam it in there because it fits the classification of whatever it may be. To the north of that property, and I don't think she's here this evening, is a dog kennel, which many of us in this room have dogs that take to Megan's Kennels. I can guarantee you if I lived on the second floor of that building and I heard dogs barking night in, night after, the $1,000 or whatever he thinks he's gonna get at, or $1,400 a night or a month he's gonna get out of these apartments, I'd be moving somewhere else if that's all I heard all night long. I got an 8-week-old baby. That thing wakes up, my baby wakes up because of those dogs, I'm out. So I think we need to start thinking about the community and not try to shoehorn items into a property. Along with that lot split, that's a bad deal. I know that's not tonight, but there's a reason you split a property. It's because you can't build on it. So, Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce Clark.
My name is Drew Clark, 174 Wintergreen Loop, Pataskala, up in Beechwood Trails. I have a whole list of things that have already been said. I do want to say thanks for listening, not only to Pataskala residents, but your neighbors to the north in Harrison Township. I don't want to overlook that. But I'm not going to repeat either all of the points. I agree with the opposition to this. I agree with all the points that have been made. I think the artillery highway is right in this commission's wheelhouse as far as something that's violating the current code or zoning designation. I don't see any benefit. I haven't heard really one benefit to the community tonight or in the other forums that we've been together with. And I do believe that this commission isn't made up of transportation and zoning experts. It's made up of community members and neighbors and friends and that sort of thing, because it's vested in this commission to protect the city. And really the only thing I want to drive home, I'm relatively new to Pataskala, but I've tried to make effort to get to know neighbors, get to know the history, get to know the local businesses and those who own it. And one of the things I've never heard of and really impressed me was that back in '96 or in the 90s, when Mr. Baird and other courageous members of the council protected Pataskala by annexing Lima Township, expanded the city so that you can control your own destiny. So we have control over the growth coming out of Columbus in central Ohio. And that's something that impressed me, and I think is something that is a gift that we have and is something to protect. And so I just ask that this commission show that same courage in considering all of these things and the residents and the type of city we want to be in and how we want it to look and how we want it to function and the quality of life that we want. I ask that you make your decision in that same spirit. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Grade 49397 Western Church Road, Pataskala, Ohio, Harrison Township trustee. I want to hit a few points here that everybody has had kind of the positive things. I think if you look at let's look at the negative things to start out with. The high density in the apartments there, the walk-ins road traffic. Anybody here drives their kids or take their kids to school in the morning or pick them up in the evening when school buses will be running in there? There's as many as 20 cars backed up right now, like that traffic light at 16. I think it's going to create a tremendous hazard, and it's going to be a safety thing. One way in for a fire truck and stuff, if that truck's broke down, there's no access, they can't get by. I think that is something that should be considered. They're 2-story high, 32, 34 foot. They need to be able to get a ladder truck in there. Is that going to happen? No, if you allow that to have this project to happen, there will be a major fire back there. We don't want to be responsible for that. So there's, excuse me, there's people here from Beechwood Trails, areas in Pataskala. I have not heard anybody from Pataskala say this is a good plan. They want to see this happen. It's not just Harrison Township. So I ask you to consider that. I think what's going to happen here, the positive, is the builder, developer, and the attorneys are going to put money in their pocket, and they're going to walk away, and any problems, they're not going to be around, they're not going to be found, they're not going to be here to do anything. I think, urge you to do the right thing, and that would be to deny this, and I hope you will consider that. Thank you.
request forms I had. Did you have any over there?
I do not.
Okay. Anybody else that has not turned in a speaker request form that want to comment?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Crockett. I'm at 1370 Harold Stewart in Pataskala. It is a situation where you have to look at the safety. My son and I were riding Sunday afternoon on Watkins Road, and it's horrible with traffic. You guys are going to put something there, and what's going to happen is kids are going to be killed. There's going to be a fire. Somebody's going to be burned up, and it's going to be too late. It happens all the time. There's not enough room there. Everybody here knows it. If you guys do this and if you go through with it, it is a huge mistake. Go out there yourselves. Try to walk down Watkins Road. You cannot do it. The traffic is horrible. If you guys do this, it is a major mistake. But the people that live, I don't even live close to it. But I see what's going to happen. I'm up and down through there all the time on Watkins Road and Broad Street. And it's the traffic study. Was it done with, when school was in session? Where did that come from? Have they looked at that for young kids going up and down Watkins Road? Little kids playing in the apartment complex that come out onto Watkins Road and get ran over? It's too late. Something needs to be addressed at that point. The traffic study. Did they take that into consideration? You got little kids that are going to be living there running around, and there's no place for them. I mean, it's a major problem. And if you guys do it, one can walk out on the Broad Street. What happens then? Same thing on Watkins Road. They're not going to be going as fast on Watkins Road, but it's going to be too late. Those are things that you have to consider. I've had kids. I've had people almost run them down going on the bus. I mean, you got to take that into consideration. There's not a lane there for people to get around on. Are they going to widen the road? It sounded earlier like, no, they're not going to. So what happens then? One kid gets killed. It's too late. Then who's going to be held responsible? That's all.
Thank you. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
I do. My name is Matt Farber. I live at 5382 Watkins Road, which is just north and across the street of this property. And I just wanted to share a quick story. Everybody's worried about the traffic and the buses and stuff. My daughter started kindergarten this past year, and she rode the bus. And the bus would come north up Watkins to pick her up, and she would have to cross the street to get on the bus. Within the first week of school, the bus driver changed the route this past year to pick her up on the way back last stop. So she would, because she had so many cars going by and not paying attention to her lights and her stop. That just happened this year. She changed the route first week of school so she could pick my daughter up on our side of the street and she wouldn't have to cross. Just an example of the real life things that happen there now with school buses and traffic and how bad it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Todd Martin. I live at 332 Enos Loomis Street, Pataskala, Ohio. After sitting here listening to this, I hear the development's this big, and there's 3 or 5 units per acre. But what it sounds like to me is we're going to put all these units right here. We got all this green space, but it's not going to be 3 or 5 units per acre. It's going to be 42 apartments within 4.8 acres. And then you're going to have all this green space. So actually, it doesn't sound like they're following the code at all. Just because the development's this big and you got all this green space, you're going to cluster everything there together. Just doesn't sound like they're meeting code to me. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Okay, doesn't appear to be any more. Connie, would you like to?
Sure.
respond to the comments.
Sure, I'd be happy to. In regard to RM zonings and direct access to arterial roads, just south on Watkins Road, if you go south of Broad, there's an EPCON community there, as 10 units per acre. In that community, I was part of that rezoning, and that has direct access and only access out to Watkins Road. There are all types of RM zone properties that are close to arterials but don't have full direct access. So just want to point that out. This is just south on South Watkins, right there, and goes into the EPCON community. There's no fuzzy math. Nobody's trying to be fuzzy about it at all. Zoned RM, they're allowed 10 units per acre. It's been brought up by the fact that when it was annexed, there was no RM, it was R5, it was changed later. If you take the whole site into view, it's still less than 5 units per acre. If you take our site into view, it's 10 units per acre. It is what it is, and it's permitted under the RM code. After hearing the concerns about the fire department, reading what the staff report said, I thought it best for me to call Mr. White, who I did yesterday. He called me back, and he said, I said what the issues were, that there was people's concerns. He said, I reviewed the plans. Fire department has no issue with the plan. It satisfies our code, and that's why I said I have no further comments. I said, do you mind me stating that tonight when I go before the committee? And he said, no problem at all. The traffic study was done as requested. It's not something that we were obligated to do, but you did request it. It was a traffic impact study. It was done during school, when school was in. It was not done on the week that school was out for spring break. And there were myovision cameras that were used, which is supposed to bring 95% to 100% accuracy. It's better than human counts, which I know we've talked about before with Ryan Holmes and that type of thing. It's what ODOT accepts for their data, and it was done correctly under an authorized traffic engineering firm. If I also may say that the future land use plan, when it talks about high density, the highest density residential that it actually has is this designation on this map. And the draft future land use plan that's currently being studied shows this as being not only high density, but 6 to 15 units per acre and 3 stories high on the new plan that has not yet been adopted. Not being followed, but that's what's still being considered after the current studies for this site.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, did you have any other, I know you left and I don't know if you were gathering some information there.
Yeah, I had reviewed this as part of my council report in May 6th in regards to the annexation of the Jefferson Meadow property. So when that was annexed, it was 34.923 acres, which does include the 6.8 acres that is considered under multiple applications. Ms. Kleem is correct. When it initially came in, it was zoned R5 multifamily residential. So it had a multifamily zoning district as part of the annexation agreement and the ordinance that passed that. At some point, the city reconfigured their zoning classifications, gave them new names. It used to be R1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, as we know, it's R7, 10, 15, etc., and that became RM multifamily. So if we look at the density with Jefferson Meadow, and this is including the 6.8 acre parcel, it's currently at 3.6 units per acre. If we include the addition of the 42 apartments, it puts it at 4.75 units per acre. And with the variance, if that lot is still split off, it's still considered part of the annexation, so it would be inconsequential in calculating the number of units per acre.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions from commission members at this time? Let's see, Darren. No. Jerry?
No, sir.
Justin? Ruth? Yeah.
The ADA parking spaces, so we've lost a foot per parking space, right? That they have to accommodate for now.
Correct.
They said that wasn't a problem. You said that wasn't a problem.
That's correct.
So not having are they required to have ADA parking spaces?
I would assume they would be required at least one, but the code does require they follow the most up-to-date ADA requirements. So the code is vague on that, but they must follow those.
So they need at least one, which is not on the plan yet. All right, so that affects parking as well. There are questions about the dumpster enclosure. Are all of those met, all of your questions? Because it looks like from here that all of the concerns we have are not met yet. Are they, for example, the decks and patios being permitted to extend into the required setback? Are they willing to address all these questions, all these open-ended problems?
We did receive the revised plans on May 31st, but as we stated, we had other obligations and other deadlines to meet that we weren't able to review them by this evening's meeting.
So all of these were met in that revision?
I don't know.
We just don't know?
As I stated, and a lot of these, like with indicating the profile of the dumpster enclosure isn't typically a huge deal in this, but in terms of addressing the other questions, we have not had an opportunity to review those plans.
Okay. So if we were to pass it, we wouldn't know if those requirements were met. If we were to pass this tonight, we wouldn't know. We would be voting in good faith that all the requirements are met.
Typically, that's why we add the modification if staff has some comments, such as those that are, show us the profile of the dumpster enclosure that are kind of low-level things that they can add. That's why we add the possible modification that they address all comments from the various city departments.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure those were covered. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one more comment.
Yep.
I don't know how many people listen to the comments between Connie Cleveland and myself. There's a lot of skepticism, obviously, about having a meeting of you or some subset of you and the developer. But I'm not persuaded that there isn't some common ground that you might find. You might not. You might have a meeting, it might be a very short meeting, and you might end up throwing potato chips at each other or something. But anyway, I think it's premature to say yes or no forever on this project right now. I think there are a lot of things up in the air, and I think that the kind of meeting I mentioned might find some of that coming. Plus, it would give some time to staff to review the recent submission and make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and so on.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I guess we're in a period of deliberation now, commission members.
Can you put the modifications up there, just so those are up there, so what we're discussing? Well, I mean, as talked about before, and as talked about here, the traffic is only gonna get displaced into one area. And, we've discussed this on so many different projects that, I'm blue in the face, 'cause, traffic's a problem everywhere. I appreciated what was stated by the Harrison Township gentlemen, and I encourage them to, you know, start those conversations soon on other projects, please.
The problem is, I'm sorry.
I'm just, you know,
You
I
vote to
encourage
like this
everybody to
project,
get
yeah.
together, all on the whole borderlines, and discuss that. I think the one argument that is very legit is the ulterior, you know, where it dumps out to. I'm still, I was perplexed on Mink, I'm perplexed on Watkins, I'm perplexed everywhere on just one right turn in and that's it. School buses, you know, the superintendent was here, they may drive up in there, they may stay out on the road, I mean, if there's too many, you know, as he stated, that they'll address that, you know, as this, you know, as, just like they did for the one gentleman, you know, the school bus and school board will take care of that. You know, they'll either drive up in or they'll stop out, whichever one they feel is
You can't back up.
most promising.
You can't back up, so that's not a problem. That's exactly what he said during that meeting. So he's gotta stay on
Again,
Watkins.
he said that he would study it.
But he
We're
can't
having our
back up, so he's
conversation,
only
please.
gotta stay on
We're having our
Watkins.
conversation, please.
I'm
Okay,
just trying
he
to make
said
sure
he
you're
said he was
presenting the right
studying,
points.
and they would figure out what they're going to do.
Right.
There's a lot of issues, left and right, you know, which way you wanna go on this.
Dustin? You look like you're ready to comment.
I'd like to start and remind my commission members what the purpose of 125901 is. I'll read it from the zoning itself. The purpose of the Transportation Corridor Overlay District is to provide overlay requirements to ensure the existing and anticipated corridor land uses and traffic improvements within the district will be developed in a manner that protects the health and safety of residents of the city of Pataskala. The importance of maintaining traffic flow and accessibility so as to reduce potential traffic hazards, to encourage compatible land uses, to comply with the Clean Air Act and subsequent amendments, and to protect property values requires a special emphasis on traffic planning, access management, and additional frontage specifications being achieved through the use of the overlay district. The TC overlay district shall also require uniform signage, and it talks about landscaping. There's not a part of this plan that doesn't affect that entire purpose. From the turnarounds, to the parkings, to the traffic, to the safety, to the property values, whether they increase or decrease, it sounds like that's something the residents are willing to deal with either way. The compatible land uses, I do agree with the RM. It was, in my opinion, as well zoned to RM because it did have arterial access. To the comments of the EPCON, I did a quick Google look real quick. It appears to be just outside the TCOD. It has two entries onto Watkins, but it's also connected through Catalina onto an arterial road. This is a different situation than what we're dealing with here. This is one way in, one way out. It's not connected to anything. And then they already discussed density issues. I think there's more than enough here to go against this.
Well, I'll state that I have some concern about the parking mostly. I know it, you know, it meets the letter of like 2 spaces per, in a practical sense, as staff has pointed out. You get visitors and, you know, it's gonna fill up, people will park, fill the garage with stuff like everybody does. They'll be parking out in the public, or the visitor spaces. One difference here that we don't see in other locations, there's no on-street parking anywhere nearby outside of this proposed development. So there's no place else for people to park. Unless they park on the grass, which, you know, we've had that discussion too. So that's my big concern. That's a big concern that I have about it. It's just, it doesn't seem, even though, again, there are 2, if you count the garage, there are 2 spaces per, but I'm not sure that it's really practical. at that point. That's me.
Well, I guess I'll just make my comments. I wanna thank everyone for coming. We understand all of your concerns. We also understand the developer, and, we're not against apartments here. I don't think anyone's against apartments. We are here to make sure that we are, servicing the code. And so, based on that, I'm looking at schools, and I'm looking at parking. I mean, it is a logistical nightmare. And so based on just those two things, I'm sure that the developer would comply with all of the questions that are, all of the modifications that are needed to be made. I'm sure that they're going to be compliant on all those. So delaying the vote really probably wouldn't make a difference at this point. So, I don't know, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks. Other comments? Discussion, I mean? And if not, are we prepared to take action on the application tonight? And if so, then I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I'm ready, but,
I think we got enough to make a vote, so, or make a decision.
I move to disapprove Transportation Corridor Overlay District application TCOD 19-001.
Before we get a second on it, I think technically or procedurally, it'd be better to make a motion to approve and then vote against it if you don't want to approve it.
Okay.
Agreed.
I move to approve Transportation Corridor Overlay District application TCOD 19-001 pursuant to the section 1259.07 of the Pataska Code for the application of TCOD 19-001 with all of the listed and proposed modifications.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the application with the list of modifications. Do I have a second?
Second.
Darren? Any discussion on that motion?
I'd like to just remind us that we are the Planning and Zoning Commission, so all of the effects of planning should go into your votes.
Any other discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Mr. Truax?
No.
Ms. Rogers?
no.
Mr. Epperson?
No.
Mr. Boggs?
No.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Ms. Ripley?
No.
That motion fails. I should point out that, again, this does not change the zoning. This does not prevent somebody from coming back with a different plan that would involve apartments. So it's just this specific application has been denied. Yeah, we'll take, thank you everybody for coming, and we're going to Okay, we'll resume the hearing. Okay, the next item on the agenda, this is on new business, item A, preliminary plan amendment, PP 19-002, and this is for Green Communities. Okay.
This is PP 19-002, located at 200 West Broad Street, overall size about 49 acres, currently zoned R10, high density residential, and the front part of it zoned GB general business. So again, I'm not gonna dwell too much on these things, because this was actually Heron Manor, which was approved through PP 18-002, I believe in February. So here we have an area map showing the overall parcel. And again, yeah, this was approved February 6, 2019, and it was approved on the condition that the rezoning for the 4.5 acre section that's currently zoned GB be approved by City Council. So during those city council hearings, there was some concern with the proposed lot sizes, and discussion was had between council members and the applicant to bring up the possibility of increasing the size of those lots in the 4.5 acre section to meet the minimum requirements of the R10 district without the cluster regulations. So council seemed amenable to that, or they didn't give a guarantee that obviously if they do that, then they'll approve the rezoning. So the zoning application was tabled by council, and the applicant submitted this amendment to the preliminary plan for Heron Manor. So the only thing that's really changed is the front part where it's zone GB. Overall, we're down, it was 20 units originally, it's down to 16 now, so we lost about 4 units. It's down to 145 from 151. Overall density is down to 3.72 from 3.88. Open space is down to 10.18 slash 21.94% from 10.33 and 22.26%. Here's an overall view of the proposal. So in that area that's zone GB, those lots are now going to meet the minimum requirements of the R10 district without applying the cluster home regulations to it. So that's 75-foot lot width with 134-foot length, minimum lot area 10,000 square feet. So in the area zone GB, the setbacks are going to be 30 feet from the front, 10 feet from the sides, and 25 feet from the rear. And here's the new in this 16 lots where it's zone GB. These are the typical lot sizes now. Again, all this stuff has remained the same. So it's here for reference if we need it, but again, I won't dwell on it too much. These are the comments from the original PP 18-002. So these will all still apply to this amendment here. And these are the comments for this hearing today. So, planning and zoning staff was recently made aware that the United States Postal Service will no longer accept curbside delivery mailboxes in residential subdivisions. Now they require what's called cluster box units, or CBUs, to create a centralized mail delivery location. So as this project is still in the planning phase, it will have to account for this. And staff would just ask the applicant to coordinate with the United States Postal Service and city staff when determining the appropriate location for these cluster boxes. And a possible modification was added to address this. The only changes that were made to the preliminary plan are outlined in the amendment summary box on page 1 of the plan. So again, just a quick summary, 20 lots have been reduced down to 16, and those will meet the minimum requirements of the R10 district without the cluster design. Phase 1 area was expanded to account for the new lot sizes. The Heron Avenue alignment was revised a slight amount. The lots were renumbered to account for the decrease in the overall number of lots, and the site statistics table was updated. So the applicants also made several changes in response to city engineer and public service director's comments from the original application. So again, all of our comments from planning and zoning staff still apply to this from the previous one. The public service director noted that right-of-way and street width revisions have been made for the comments in the previous plan. However, his full comments are attached in your staff report. City engineer said that several comments were addressed from the previous plan. However, some of them will still apply. I believe a red line version of his comments are attached there to your staff report. Utility director did include an update with this, so he would like the installation of an on-site Kohler equivalent diesel fuel generator at the settlement lift station that can provide power to all aspects of the lift station, and for them to replace the existing manual transfer switch with an automatic one. And the West Licking Fire District included these comments with the new submittal. The first one being that all cul-de-sacs shall have minimum width of 96 feet of unobstructed paved drivable surface, posted signs that state no parking. And 2, based on the number of lots on Waterlily Lane, they require a second access to this road or to reduce the number of lots. Didn't receive any other comments with this current application. Again, the surrounding properties to the north are, looks like this table had malfunctioned, so we'll just go to this view. Everything in the dark green here is in R10, so to the east we have the settlement of Pataskala, which is all zoned R10. To the west and north we have it all zoned agricultural, which is currently vacant. And of course to the south we have some GB. Part of this will be taken up by the 16 lots, and the access road directly across the street we have it zoned GB and M1, which are just various commercial businesses. Modifications are here. They are the same ones from the previous application. 1 being the applicant shall address all comments and questions of the planning and zoning department. 2, addressing comments and questions of the city engineer. 3, addressing comments and questions of the utility department. 4, shall address comments and questions of the Public Service Director, and 5, rezoning application ZON 18-012 shall be approved by City Council. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Questions from commission members? Darren?
No question.
Jerry?
No, sir.
Preston?
Was that no cluster only applied to phase one?
I believe so. I believe phase 1 is just the first access into the subdivision off of Broad. So,
There's only the GB part.
Essentially, aside from approximately 2 lots.
So just these lots right here that are shaded, plus 2 that are kind of partway into it, are the ones that have changed.
Okay. Rip, questions?
Yeah, this is really both for Jack and Scott. It's minor, but we ought to straighten it out. In the written report, you have 6 conditions that we ought to, or the suggestion would be that they would be added to the motion of approval, whereas on what you showed on the screen, there were five things, and I just wondered which it is.
It would be, and our apologies, that would be the 6, with the 6 being the coordination with the Postal Service and staff for the cluster mailboxes.
Okay, so if we have a motion including modifications, we ought to include the 6 on page 9. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And that was because that's just recently
Just
discovered,
earlier.
right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Ruth? Okay, Ann?
The tree replacement survey and landscaping plan was not included. And no proposed phasing plan is included.
Yeah, they were included.
It says they weren't included.
Were those comments from a previous hearing?
General comments, they might have been. So is that something that, oh, that was, okay, that's the old one. Not the updated one. Okay, you got that taken care of. All right. My apologies. I still have concerns about them saying that a right turn-in lane is not required. I live here. I insist on it. I can't see the future of Pataskala not having a right turn lane in there. I just can't see it. I live here. We just had another accident at Columbia and Broad, 2 weeks ago? The cement truck hitting the pickup truck. I'm telling you, it's a dangerous intersection. They're not required to have the traffic impact study done, so they're not doing it. And I think if it were done, it would be a problem. Am I confusing traffic impact with traffic study? They're 2 different kinds, right? Traffic impact and traffic access.
They conducted the traffic access study.
So, traffic impact, I think, would show a bigger picture. I'm really, really, really concerned about that intersection, and I just don't know how else to say it. But bare minimum, that right turn-in lane, like I said, I live here. You do all the studies you want. I'm not a believer. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff this time? No? Okay, hi. Hi. Once again,
Yes.
do you swear that any testimony will give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer unto God?
I do.
Thank you.
Connie Klima, P.O. Box 991, Pataskala, Ohio. As you know, you approved this plan without, with the 4.85 acres all being clustered. And we went on to zoning, our zoning portion, which is only the 4.85. And there were discussions about having the entry lots actually be larger in accordance with the R10 and not. And with that discussion, I discussed it with my clients, and we actually made the offer. I wrote emails to all of the council members and said, would you be inclined to consider us reducing those lots to, from the 21 to 16 and having those larger at the entry? And they then, after their second reading, said that they would allow us to come back. Basically, we said we are only going to change that portion of the plan. They understood that, and we asked Brian Zetz the best route to do it. He said to come back and actually make the application as a amended preliminary plan, which is what we did. And we did, as you know, all the studies before, and we are, as you know, putting in the turn lane that would be a left-hand turn lane when you're heading eastbound on 16, as we discussed. None of the things have changed that you approved before, except that we've reduced it by 6 lots actually, from 51 to 145.
Okay, don't go away.
Okay.
Jerry, any questions?
No, sir.
Dustin?
I appreciate the reduction.
One question I had, the fire district added the new thing on Waterloo Lane
Yes.
with the second
And
access.
we discussed it with Mr. White, and we're fine with whatever the fire department ultimately agrees to. We're talking about the definition of all of those things, and I think we're working all that out.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that could change then, that would be covered.
But we just know that we're gonna be in accordance with whatever their final requirement is.
Okay, thank you. Britt?
No.
Ann?
No.
Dustin?
Sorry, follow up. With the proposed, or the post office requirements now,
We're fine with, we learned about those, and we'll have to figure out we're gonna place that.
okay,
Yeah.
because recommendation would be probably closer to the front where it's more spread out for people pulling up, parking, getting their mail on their way back to the house, other than back where it's more dense.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for colleagues? Okay. We had no speaker request forms for this. Is that correct? Anyone in the audience wish to? Okay. Come on up. And I'll swear you in. You swear that any testimony will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Okay, your name and address?
My name is Steve Fisher. I live at 331 Isaac Thorpe Street here in Pataskala. Okay, I was at the February meeting for the zoning when you approved this, and I saw the phase on the latest diagram. I saw the phases in there, but there's no timing how the phases will be done from the standpoint, will phase 1 be done, phase 2, and is there particular restrictions on how much of each phase has to be done before the next phase is open? Or can they just go in and put all the roads in and start selling houses back in phase 7? Because this comes into play with how when it gets connected into the settlement, the 2 roads that connect into the settlement, when these phases or how these phases are done, so we can have an idea of when these roads are going to be connected in and when we can start expecting to see traffic from here. Because one of the things that we did say at the February meeting, that there would be no construction traffic in the settlement. Well, that's not in any of the verbiage either. That is not there. So right now, there could be construction traffic in the settlement given the way things are written up. The other thing is that they state some parking restrictions. Do the parking restrictions apply to the streets that are in the settlement, or are they just going to be in the Heron Manor area? It's not clear.
This is a separate application just for Heron Manor.
Right, but the application itself talks about parking restrictions, and it puts the Isaac Thorpe and the other street that's in the settlement in that in the verbiage, and they talk about parking restrictions, but they don't exclude the streets in the settlement.
Well, again, this application only applies to the Heron Manor
Well,
development, not to.
I'm just saying, the one thing is, I'm saying this, when we approved this in February, this was all discussed and agreed to, but it didn't get into the verbiage.
Okay.
That's where I'm coming to the things that I thought were agreed to then, and you guys approved, I thought would be put into those plans, and they're not there.
Okay.
So nothing in writing, but it was stated that it would be done.
Okay, thank you. Come on up. swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer unto God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Todd Mountain, 332 Enos Loomis Street, Pataska, Ohio. I mean, they did say that there would be no construction traffic. There's no verbiage. My question is who's going to enforce it? Because I already know the city of Pataska, the police department, they don't have time. I call about people running the stop sign all the time doing 50 mile an hour. It's true. They don't have time to sit out there and patrol it. So who is going to do it? Who's going to enforce it? That's what I want to know. And certainly, why is it not in the verbiage?
That would typically come with the construction plans, and there's standardized notes about where the traffic would be. So that, if this is approved and we go through council and the rezoning is approved, the next step is to do the construction plans, and that's where that verbiage would be, on the construction plans. And then we have 2 inspectors that'll be out on site and ensuring that it doesn't go through the settlement. If they violate the terms of the construction plans, that's in violation of approved plans. It could be mayor's court involved. So the city will be monitoring to make sure that it goes through the Heron Manor portion of the development.
My next question is about number of units per acre. You know, because after listening to the last one, it just seems like, I got a 49-acre development. I'm gonna put 200 homes in half of it, and I'll have the other half green space. But I'm meeting the overall requirement for the homes. So does it break down per acre? How many per acre, or is it just whatever the size of the development is and what the average is across the development?
They'll look at the overall acreage of the development and then the units in the overall acreage. So that's where we get the density.
Okay. So there's the fuzzy map. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. Hi. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth, as you shall answer unto God?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name's John Ellis. I live at 335 Isaac Tharp. The question I have is also with traffic control during construction times. The only way I can see you can control that traffic is by not opening up access to the new development for Enos Loomis and Isaac Tharp until that development is settled.
There will
Forcing them to come in on Broad Street.
There will need to be at some point alternate access for the fire department. They'll need a secondary access. So at some point when they get to perhaps Alonzo Palmer, they will need to make that connection for safety.
Okay, I guess that's my question to you. I live back on Isaac Tharp. When is it that they're gonna crack that egg, that road will go through to the new development?
And I don't know their time frame, but typically there's multiple variables in terms of how they move through the phases. So there's no, from my perspective, I don't know.
Okay, that's a concern to me because to make this thing work right, that we're not having, I'm in the concrete business, I know my trucks. To have those trucks rolling up and down through there at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning because there's access that way versus coming in the construction entrance is a concern. And it's for that, it's for wall, people that do walls, people that do concrete, people that do roofing, etc. I would hope while this is going on, it's restricted. And the only way you're gonna restrict it is, trust me, I know, is not by allowing access. You can't have access through there. They will go that way. That's what's on GPSs.
There's a probability, and that's why we do have inspectors to monitor that.
They're not out there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
They can't start at 6 in the
I
morning.
know you'd be surprised.
I don't disagree.
Any arguments back here?
I don't disagree,
Okay.
but we do regulate that in all, they could do that, but they're not supposed to. There's consequences if they were to do that.
The consequences have never been followed through on, in my opinion, because I've had numerous occasions that I have turned it in and I have verified nothing has ever been done against them, and they roll back out there a week later, and instead of being 6 o'clock, they roll in at 6:30.
Who did you file those complaints with?
Fisher Homes.
That's the thing, you need to call the city.
Okay.
The city would have followed up on those complaints to make sure that they were abiding by the terms of the construction plans.
Well, that doesn't give me a warm fuzzy about Fisher Homes. Why didn't they turn around and call the city?
I would turn that over to Fisher Homes to answer that.
And you're telling me I can't, okay. All right.
I
Sure.
can't answer for Fisher Homes.
Well, I know, but that's a big concern of mine, quality of life while this this project is going on.
I don't disagree.
Last thing, I wasn't here for the prior meeting. Zone 1 going to a lesser density of homes. Why only that zone versus the entire project? What's so special about that zone?
That was council.
Hmm?
That was council's suggestion.
But for what reason?
I couldn't tell you. And
Oh.
Ms. Klima stated she had sent those emails to council, but I was not privy to those emails.
Makes nicer lots out by the road, and then in the back it gets clustered.
Changes the perception.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good night.
Makes it look good until you get back here.
Oh, did you wish to respond to any of the comments?
I don't think there's anything that I need to respond to except for that, the direct access in on our road that we're required to put in is gonna be a direct route back. I think we talked about that originally. And we won't be opening up anything until we get to that phase, so we won't be back to those streets for a while. And when that happens, it's more of a direct access than going all through the settlement, that's for sure.
So you're
And
saying,
what Scott said is,
sorry.
yeah, what Scott said is accurate, of course.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions from commission members? Jerry?
I guess I have a couple questions for us. Do we wanna should we add a 7 for the construction traffic, or will that completely be handled with the, construction phase? Should we add that into a condition?
You're more than welcome to add it as an additional safeguard. Typically, that is in the general notes of the construction plans, but if you'd be more comfortable adding it as another level of safeguard, you're more than welcome to do that.
And if we added that, Connie, would that be amenable
Oh,
to?
it's fine, it's what we plan to do.
Okay, that's fine. My other comment would be, if it is GPSed and that road's blocked off, they're gonna go up there and they're gonna turn around anyway. If they're following GPS, just thinking outside of delivery trucks, I know what they do. I had a bunch of them for years, so.
I agree,
They're
but
gonna
they'll
follow it
only
and
do
then-
that once.
And hopefully there'll be construction plans. I would strongly suggest taking a picture and then sending it to the city. Taking a picture with the timestamp. That will help you and help the city to be able to, take care of it. That's all I should.
Any other comments, discussion? If not, are we prepared to act on this application tonight?
I move that we approve the amendment to the preliminary development plan for Heron Manor subdivision application number PP-19-002 pursuant to section 1113.14 of the Pataskla Code with the following 7 modifications, with number 7 being all construction traffic to be directed to new construction roads, not to be traveling on residential roads already being used.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve the amendment with the 7 modifications. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Darren. Any discussion on the motion to approve with those modifications?
Should we word 7 to the effect of just not through existing settlement roads?
Not through current,
Because if you
not
say
through current residential.
the current residential could include phase 1 of Heron.
So we'd have to have this motion fail, and then we would, well, actually, have we seconded it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can modify the motion. So the one, number 7 could be all construction traffic shall be routed through Heron Manor.
Okay.
I think that would clear up any confusion in the future.
So no.
So you're good with that?
I am
And
good.
the second, Darren, you're okay with that? All right. So, again, any discussion on the modified?
No,
So, motion? Roll call.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
No.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you for hearing tonight and for commenting. Okay, we move on to the agenda. Section 6, Item A, Proposed Broad Street Plan Development District.
Hi,
Let
good
me,
evening.
let me swear you in.
Sure.
Do you swear that any testimony will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got some for you.
Oh,
So I put all your
the controls, huh?
lines over there, so just give them on there.
Okay. Okay. Well, good evening. I'm Todd Ferris with Ferris Planning and Design. We're landscape architects and planners. I'm here on behalf of Metro Development. They're our client. I know Joe Thomas is here with Metro, and he will be able to give you some background on their company in general, but they have been developing in Central Ohio since the 60s or 50s. And they've done many communities, anywhere from Grove City up into Delaware. Like I said, it's Central Ohio primarily, and I think they started on campus back in the early 60s. The project that we're wanting to discuss tonight, bring before you preliminarily, is a parcel of ground that is right on the border of Columbus and Pataskala. The slide that you see, okay, you're controlling it too, or did I do that? Or did I do anything? I didn't do anything. So I'm looking at this. So this is confusing. I'm looking at this one. I got to get used to this situation. How do I go back? Oops. Oh. Okay, well, yeah, I know what's happening. Anyway, this site is directly across the street from Limited, the Limited site on East Broad. Taylor is the first roadway to the east of this. And the corporation boundary line is the western boundary of this parcel. The parcel is about 60 acres, 65 acres to be exact. What the client, Metro Development, is looking to do on this property is a mixed-use development where they would have commercial oriented up front, multifamily on the western edge of it, and then single-family residential in the back portion. What we would propose to do would be bring this in as a planned development. With that are certain requirements that we have to meet, which there's lots of detail, and I don't want to get into any of that detail tonight because you guys went through plenty of detail. But it requires a certain percentage of open space, preservation of trees, things like that. So we have put together a preliminary concept plan that starts illustrating what we think we would do to accommodate those goals. What we do have is the primary access off of Broad Street. And we have two emergency access points in the rear. If we have any, no, we don't have any margins. That's the one that's just that. Where we have the two cul-de-sacs, we would look at those as being emergency access for fire, and also act as pedestrian pathways so people can actually utilize that open space that's in there. We would incorporate about 23 acres of open space and if you would preserve, because this site is fairly well wooded right now. I want to get into some of the details. I don't know if you guys got a packet on this or not. Okay. So again, single family in the rear, multi-family to the east or to the west, and then commercial in the front. Just kind of go through some of the architectural character. This would be similar to the single family homes that we'll be proposing on the lots. Just the streetscape that would bring. This is the multifamily residential. This is 3-story, 24-unit multifamily residential. They provide amenities with that multifamily component that includes a clubhouse with Olympic-style type pool. The clubhouse has lots of amenities as far as meeting rooms, television, or not television, but movie room, theater. They have concierge services, things like that to cater towards the residents. These are just some more details of what that clubhouse and just some of the architecture looks like. Some examples of some of the retail that they would be looking at front. Again, probably some inline retail that's towards the back, and up front more towards the out parcels, which could be either specialty restaurant type of uses, banks, things of that nature. But that's the way that we've kind of set that up. I don't know if we have. Do I have the ability to zoom in and out on this at all, or no?
Unfortunately, no.
You don't, huh?
Sorry.
You don't, huh? Okay. Well, anyway, so you see the areas that are in yellow. That is the commercial. Right next to that is the multifamily. I think you could probably tell what that is because it's got the buildings where they're closer together, the darker areas, and then the single family in the rear. We've utilized, planning principles that are common, where we use our single family to buffer the existing residential single family that's to the east from the higher intensity uses of the commercial as well as the multifamily. As you see, the multifamily we placed closer towards the businesses that are to the west of us, therefore buffering the existing single family residences and keeping that buffer in mind. As far as density, we're looking at an overall density on the tract of a little over 6 units per acre when you combine all the different uses. The lot sizes are 52 foot by 120 foot or 130 foot lot depths. And the multifamily units, we have a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom, 1 and 2 bedroom units on the site, and they vary from about 700 square feet for the 1 bedrooms to about 1,000? 950 on the 2 bedroom. There's usually about a 25 to 30% mix on the 1 bedrooms and the rest being 2 bedrooms. We provide covered garages for the parking. 25% of the units typically have garage parking for that. They're detached garages, not attached to the units. But we offer several amenities for those residents. I don't know what else you might want to add for this, Joe. Just really looking for feedback from your side. I mean, we've heard a lot without even needing any feedback from you guys so far on what's going on. But we think, given this location, given the fact that there's major employers all the way around us, actually the company that has this for sale is the major employer across the street. They are in support of this because they see that as a great need for their employees to have housing that's close by to them and close by to all the other new businesses that you're seeing and that are starting to expand in the area. And we also like to bring in the mixed use aspect because it definitely starts cutting down on the daily trips. It doesn't get rid of going to the grocery store. I understand there's no grocery store here, but it definitely keeps people from having to run to the drugstore or the dry cleaner or whatever. They can actually get right into this without getting onto Broad Street. And I know that's an issue, but again, that's another benefit of the mixed-use development. So with that, you kind of
Can we see your drawings? That way we can kind of look at them.
You can, yeah. Oh, he's got packets. I don't know what to do there. I've got one set. See if you've got. There's one set there. Oh, I am so sorry. That's all right. That's not yours, so I can break it. Yeah, let Joe hand those out.
Thank you.
And then I also put together kind of a photo gallery of more information on the multifamily aspect of what we offer in our community as far as the clubhouse amenities and then interior photos of the actual units. So just give you kind of a photo gallery of what would be built out there in that area.
So out on the Taylor will be just like emergency access,
Correct.
kind of a trail, but not a road.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know, most fire departments want a 20-foot wide emergency pathway, but we typically have gates or knockdown bollards, whatever they desire. But we'd like to make it so, you know, pedestrians can go through their bicycles, because that way it's a multi-use type of
Is this open forum, Rick? Can we?
Yes.
Is this the same property before where there was a portion in Blacklick that had to be talked about, or was that just another section of this? Cause I know there was, I thought when the one group was here earlier this year that there was a part of it that was Blacklick?
There was one a few years ago that did include some property further down that never came to fruition, but this is all within city
So
limits.
this is all city, so there
Correct.
is no annexation from Blacklick or nothing?
That's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
If I may add to that, L Brands, which owns this site, also owns a piece of ground in Blacklick.
Okay.
And Casto Communities was looking at variations of, you know, annexations into other municipalities to be able to build multifamily there. From what I understand, it never came to fruition for many reasons. I think one of them being is utility services in that particular area that can't be addressed. Whereas this piece of property has full access to utilities.
What's the current zoning on this
R20, I believe.
for the entire parcel?
Correct.
Okay.
King Heights is gonna hate it.
I was just gonna say, you're going, I mean, I appreciate the breaking up of the property and what you're trying to do, but when you get to that back portion, the way they're all, you're gonna have the same group of people
Oh, a
screaming
room
and
full of
yelling.
people?
Yes, yes.
Well, wouldn't be the first, but, you know, I understand.
You know, Todd made a good point. May I speak? I'm sorry. I'm
You
Jeff
weren't
Thomas.
sworn in.
No, Joe Thomas, Method
I'll swear you in
Development.
just for the record there. Do you swear that any testimony you will give in this matter will be the whole truth as you shall answer unto God?
I do.
Thank you.
And, you know, Todd alluded to this earlier about the planning principles that we're trying to incorporate in this site, you know, trying to respect our neighbors to the east, have a like product, you know, from the single family going down to the multifamily and of course the commercial along Broad Street. And, you know, with your guys' input, there's some flexibility and setbacks and buffers and those kind of nature that we think are very important as part of the planning process that we go through with each municipality. You know, trying to keep the multifamily and the commercial up against the less impactful areas, you know, with the commercial against our multifamily that's already existing there. Is kind of where we're trying to cluster those individual units so they have, and then of course, if anybody who would purchase a home in this community adjacent to the multifamily, there'd be full disclosure of what they're purchasing a home against. And then as well as traffic, try not to infringe upon neighbors on the Taylor Road. That's why we showed no connection as a connection, you know, traffic-wise on the Taylor Road, to try to keep all traffic onto Broad Street and only have emergency access on Taylor Road, because the last thing we want to do is, you know, impact their neighborhood as it currently exists.
Yeah, I don't know, I guess I kind of question why not put one.
Yeah, 'cause turning
Taylor
left
to-
out of here would be a
and
nightmare.
eliminate
It
a
would be
couple
a
more
nightmare.
lots and put a, do what, Dustin?
So drive, I mean, I take that route at between 4 and 5 o'clock every day on the way home, and you're already lining up back past the L Brands light because of the 2-lane to 1-lane as you go east of Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's gonna have to probably be another whole light right there, turn lanes and everything.
Huh.
I think a lot of residential to dump on one exit or one entrance off of Broad, at that point on Broad, like you said.
And that is what happens behind Myers and all that, already right on up the road there, so
Mhm.
it's, I can understand both arguments, you know.
There's existing light there.
I know,
Taylor.
there's an existing light there, yeah. And I don't know if that's close enough to be have another light added, because there's already another one right there.
I spaced,
there.
yeah, I spaced this exit to be equidistant between the two lights, because that's the best thing I can do once we go to ODOT. You know, we haven't been to them, I don't think. Did you ever met?
No.
We haven't met with them, and they just got this in contract, and we thought it best to come and talk to you guys informally to find concerns before we started moving forward.
That's probably gonna be your number one concern.
Probably, yeah. And then buffering, we know we're gonna be meeting with residents.
Followed
That's,
really closely by the school district.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You just expect no support there at all.
Yeah, so
right.
kind of talk about, the school district in particular. We understand the impact that residential plays on the school districts and understanding, what school districts always lack thereof, and it's mostly funding. And, from this area in particular, just want to give you kind of background on what this type of development would offer in property taxes, from the standpoint of just, from the standpoint of the current development to what it could be. So the apartment development would be roughly estimated about $23 million investment with a yearly annually property tax of $525,155, and the current taxes on the property is only $87,000. And then of that $525,000, $352,000 of that goes directly to the Licking Heights School District, which currently the school district only receives $58,000. So, we talk also about the commercial area itself too, with the commercial area of roughly 7.9 acres with an estimated value of $6.3 million, with the annual property tax of $144,000 would be additional $97,000 to the Licking Heights School District, and that's an annual tax that is without property values going up. So that was just kind of some quick numbers, and that, of course, that additional $97,000 of income to the school district is in addition to what they're only receiving today, which is the current $58,000. So you're looking at an annual bump in income from the school district of roughly $450,000 to $460,000 per year annually for the school district. So.
But I'm sure they'll counter that.
Oh, yeah.
You're adding a lot more expense on them too.
Well, no,
not just
without a doubt. But, we work throughout Central Ohio with other school districts and have created a lot of partnerships with school boards as well as school superintendents. So looking for the opportunity to work with this school district in particular and have them, as a positive aspect of it, because what we look at is the positive numbers. Of course, there is school-age children that will be produced by the single family, and we do agree that some school-age children will be in the multifamily, but we really limit our impact because it's 1 and 2 bedroom, and we don't offer amenities for families in particular. In our multifamily, it's more of a empty nester as well as young professional type of climate in our multifamily product itself. So, but knowing that there is school-age children, which we average about 10%, so with this particular product, we look at about 26 school-age children produced by the multifamily.
What stages are you planning on? What phases, or are you just planning on developing the whole thing at once? What's your plan?
No, we'll ultimately build the entrance as our first staging area up through, going north of Broad Street back to the single family. And I would assume the single family would be in most likely 3 different phases. And then the multifamily will be constructed all at once. And then probably 50% of the commercial will be constructed up front, and then have the balance of the commercial developed within probably 12 to 16 months after that. But the multifamily, like I said, we build in one single phase, and it'll take approximately 18 months to build.
But which one do you think you'll start? I mean, I understand the entrance.
Yeah, it'll be simultaneously
Okay.
done with the 3 different aspects: the commercial, the multifamily.
Okay, so there won't be a phase 1, phase 2, so you're just
Correct.
going to go.
Yeah, so phase 1 of the single family will probably go under construction with the first construction of the first buildings in the multifamily.
Okay.
So,
How many total units are you expecting
on the multifamily,
altogether?
300, where's it at?
366.
366.
could steer away from clustering homes better. I understand it's in green space, but it's also adding to a larger problem of density impact, which is probably more detrimental in the city than losing a few more trees.
By that, you mean just like larger lots or less lots, both?
Both.
So instead of 52s, put in 62s and lose 20, 30
Yeah,
lots or whatever.
We get a lot of proposals where it's like 10 feet between houses.
Right, unfortunately, that's the, that is, and Joe can attest this, because he's selling this stuff across central Ohio, and you've heard it all, and I don't get that.
Yeah.
That, I understand both sides.
We have a lot of.
I work in the middle, and I try to be the middle man.
There's options for that for people in the city, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
What kind of price are you thinking about your multifamily home?
They'll be $900, $1,100 a month, depending on, you know, 1 or 2 bedrooms. So some go, you know, higher than that, just depending on if they make the choice to have a garage, which adds another additional, you know, amount to their rent. And if they have pets, it adds additional amounts to the rents. So we actually rent the pets exclusively, you know, as far as the market goes.
But I couldn't just rent it if I was a pet, right?
You could if you had the credit background, so and the proper background investigations and all that kind of stuff. If you have a
There's a lot of
job.
money being left to pets anymore, so you never know, there may be a pet that can afford it.
Yeah.
I would add that we did, planning and zoning did make a recommendation to council for a development at Mink in Columbia that Connie's well aware of, had some cluster development in it. They did not approve it. So, you might wanna think about that. And we might wanna think about that in the future, you know, because they're shifting their focus now. They're concerned about development. So, that intersection, it's a nightmare.
They all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
Wall Street.
They all are.
And part of, I mean, obviously, part of this development, once he does a traffic impact, this is big enough.
They're not all bad. All of our
They're gonna
intersections are not bad.
make an intersection improvement.
It's not
also,
true.
but-
That intersection at Broad and Taylor.
You saying it's good or bad?
Bad.
Oh yeah, where they're scaling down, there's
Yes.
a bottleneck there.
There's a bottleneck
Yeah,
there.
I noticed that.
Again, until they double up the lanes all the way through.
So if you wanna pay for that widening,
Well, probably something that ODOT's gonna require.
That leads to another conversation.
Agree or disagree forever.
You know, we do in a lot of other areas is TIFs. You know, the joining a TIF on this particular site would generate an amount of income or, you know, monies for Pataska in general to do those special projects. You know, from this particular site alone, it's roughly $7 million of TIF dollars that can be generated in addition to, of course, school districts and stuff like that already being, so it's a non-school TIF that will generate roughly, and that's, you know, pretty conservative estimate of $7 million for those particular kind of projects that, you know, the Pataska would deem necessary for structure or infrastructure improvements. So it's just, you know, a thought here that we use quite a bit in other areas.
Well, that and the schools. So, like that, all the other is, you know, we all know about. But I just thought I'd let you know. I didn't know if you were aware that they.
No,
that they
I'm actually one of the
rejected one of their
trustees at the
plans.
BIA, and that was one of the concerns, you know, our message at the BIA obviously is pro-building and pro-development.
Right.
But, you know, the most recent study that we undertook at the BIA was hired a consultant to study the housing market in Central Ohio, and currently we're well underserved, about half of what's necessary to fulfill the needs of necessary housing. You know, from a standpoint, we're behind about 8,000 to 7,000 or 7,000 to 8,000 homes a year building in Central Ohio, and that includes Pataska as part of that market to serve the needs of the residents that live throughout the, you know, the Columbus MSA, as they call includes about 10 counties. So, and I can present that study to each and every board member with a link to show the detail of the background of that study and what information they researched to show that housing shortage. You know, with the Columbus 2050 being rolled out and Mercy, everybody's estimating that by 2050, Columbus possibly grow by another, Columbus area possibly grow by another 1 million residents. And like I said, we're underdeveloping homes. If you look at like and kind markets, Columbus, Central Ohio area to like Indianapolis, we build about half the number of homes with the same amount of population. And if you even look at like Raleigh, North Carolina, and Austin, Texas, we build about a quarter to a third of the homes that they build with the same population market. So it's dynamic. I mean, it's interesting because with the lack of homes usually equates to the lack of job growth. So every
People
time
move in and they don't want to get no more homes.
That's
well,
true too, yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon. So,
Yeah, I'm here.
you know, like the mention of no more construction traffic in their neighborhood. I understand the reluctance of allowing construction to go through your neighborhood, but of course your neighbor was building their house and then you moved in and then the next door neighbor was building their house and you lived there for a year. So there's always a struggle. So that's why we're trying to stay on Broad Street and not go through Taylor Road.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns that you're talking about underbuilding or the not building enough, not serving the demand. I think generally we would not want to put all of that development, catch-up work in Pataskala.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't want to be the housing center for the
So
whole.
we're building 1,500 units this year throughout Central Ohio, which includes City of Delaware, City of Marysville, Columbus, Hilliard. So yes, we're not only attacking Pataskala. And I use that as a polite word, but yeah, we just see the need, especially in this corridor because of the amount of jobs that are in this area. You know, I've worked with a lot of these business partners and they don't, you know, it's always better for them as employers to have housing closer to their businesses because there's less commuting issues. You know, traffic, as everybody says, is becoming more of a congestion problem with traffic, longer drive times to
Less
work.
tardiness.
And it's more issues of people being tardy, late, or never showing up because of that issue. And then you factor in weather. Employer, you know, loses 10 to 15% of their employment base when the weather's bad because of the length of drive to that business from where they have reasonable priced housing. So it's one of those things that if you can concentrate the housing around the larger businesses and employers, there's less congestion on traffic. There's better opportunities for, you know, people with employment. So there's all different kind of positives that come out of that. Not to mention, you know, the residents themselves shopping in local stores, generating, you know, sales tax and then paying income tax to the different municipalities where they either work or not work, depending how the income tax is broken up. So there's all those items.
What's the proposed price point on the single family homes?
$250 to $350. Probably something similar to really what is in the current market right now. And that pricing is always, you know, going up. We're seeing a lot of, in the cluster homes in particular, you're seeing a lot of different market buyers, from empty nesters to young professionals to, you know, smaller families that just simply don't want the larger yards to maintain. And
I'm not denying there's a demand for it, but.
yeah, I understand.
We've been clustered to death.
Yeah.
There's probably close to 1,000 of those lots in Pataskala if they're interested.
I understand.
We've been clustered to death. Yeah, just be conscious of the density.
Okay.
That would be my opinion.
Speaking of traffic, that particular area in the winter doesn't get snow plowed. It's Columbus, it's in between Reynoldsburg and Pataskala, and it just sits there and it just
The
gets
Pataskala section does, the Columbus section doesn't, because Columbus won't come out that far.
in between Taylor and, well,
They actually hit to there.
Taylor and
It's-
Wagner.
It's right at it's right at the Pataskala line. Pataskala does plow up to the
Right.
Pataskala line.
Exactly, and it literally cuts off right there.
And right there,
And it'll
they
be a
don't-
foot
from
deep
Cotton
and
piled
good
up.
luck.
From that
Pataskala
section
puts it
all
up
the
on
way.
Columbus.
There's a big wall.
It's just shovel.
There's this big circle.
And you'll see snowplows drive right over it and leave it
To get to the next,
to get to,
yeah. That's unfortunate.
Columbus
doesn't do a very good
Columbus
job.
doesn't finish that last quarter, half mile, they don't. They don't
Can you
clear
guys
that
jump
whole-
over and get that piece out of Blacklick? Is that about the?
Go to buy it
Yeah.
and bring it to us.
Is it continuous?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think it's continuous.
No.
Blacklick in the sense that Jefferson Township was contacting us to want us to build on it, if they can service it and, you know, I like this piece better. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. I know it's been a long evening.
It's what we do, that's why we get paid.
Get paid by the hour too.
That's right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you too.
Yep, thank you.
You didn't,
What?
you didn't take it with you?
No, I didn't. Give them back.
All right. Next on the agenda, CAM. Parking on grass and inoperable vehicles. And you passed out a
I did.
proposed.
Ms. Rogers, do you want me to take it from here?
Sure, please.
Okay, so my apologies, this didn't make it into the packet, but for our discussion, last month there was some desire from the commission to move forward with potentially amending the codes to address disabled vehicles and parking on the grass. So I had a quick rundown of what the current code is, and then proposed revision or revisions. So under disabled vehicles, the current definition is any vehicle that is extensively damaged, such damage including but not limited to any of the following: missing wheels, tires, motor, transmission, and or in a state of not being operable. One issue we have had with that is it doesn't clearly indicate unlicensed or lacking current licensing. We could draw the conclusion that if you do not have current registration or current license plate, that's inoperable, but our attorney or law director prefers that we use a section of the code that specifically states that. So the proposed definitions, change it to disabled motor vehicle, just so it's clear that, you know, if your bike is missing a tire, we're not gonna come out and do code enforcement on that. So it essentially goes through everything and or in a state, in the last portion, and or in a state of not being operable, including missing or expired license plates or registration. So that would be an indication or a clarification for that, so we'd have that piece in there that we specifically say it lacks registration. Then motor vehicle, we didn't have a definition in our code, so I thought it'd be prudent to include that. This came from the traffic section of the code, so it's an existing definition that we have, but that's in the, you know, the criminal code with traffic, but doesn't apply to zoning, so we just pulled that over. So those would be two potential additions to address disabled vehicles from a definition standpoint. So if there's any issues or you don't like it, feel free to poke holes in it. This was just kind of an attempt to get the ball rolling.
My reaction looks okay. I mean, looks reasonable.
Yeah, I react the same way. I mean, I read it quickly, but,
Yeah, I know, I actually, I bought a truck and I had two license plates, one was expired and one wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me the one that was expired is gone. So I like it because, yeah, once it's expired, they said I can't use those plates, it's gone.
Okay.
And you may check that off with them, but that's what she told me. So I had to use the other ones that still had a time on tags.
Would there be some confusion in the motor vehicle definition? Because, for example, like a quad or a, you know, golf cart or dirt bike can't legally be on the road, but it could go on the road. So there's some gray room there.
There is, and I thought like golf cart went through my mind, some of those things, but I don't know how to fully encapsulate some of those things. That if you have a damaged golf cart on your front lawn that's up on blocks, I mean,
No batteries.
yeah, they,
Put a plan in it and it's.
I'm sure which, and perhaps we could say that's legally permitted to operate on the road. We could do that, but then that excludes the dirt bikes, it excludes quads, it excludes golf carts.
Could say something to the effect of something that transports personnel or property in any manner.
Then,
Cause then you get the boats on trailers, you get.
we do already have a section for boats on trailers that if it doesn't have a current license plate, you're only allowed one.
Right.
So we do have that covered. I guess our thought was more towards cars and trucks and things like that. In all honesty, I'm sure no matter how much we try and shape it, there's always gonna be like the golf cart situation
Right,
where
right.
we've never seen it, but who knows?
Right, correct.
Yeah, and the other thing, like a riding lawnmower, that's not supposed to go on the road, but arguably it's a motor vehicle. Are we gonna run into something like that? I don't.
Tractors and everything else.
Right.
But if you put a slow moving, you can take it on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put a slow moving triangle on the back.
I mean, there
take
was
it on the
even a
road.
situation where there was a guy who had read a news article, had too many DUIs, so he attached a motor to a bar stool and was pulled over on that. So we do not cover motorized bar stools either. I don't.
I think you tried to cover it, yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways, and I agree it does, there's different ways you can word it, but there's still gonna be ways that people are gonna find
And I would,
something.
yeah, and I would say probably about 100% of the violations for this are for cars and pickups and vans and things of that nature, that we don't see the oddballs. Not to say it can't happen, but and as soon as I say this, but knock on wood, we have yet to see any of those curveballs come our way.
Yeah, looks good to me. Although I probably need more time to read it and think about it.
And that's
I feel
fine. And
pressured.
Yeah, no, we can, this is just getting the ball rolling,
Yeah.
take your time. I was just gonna go through, see if we could poke, I mean, we can always poke holes in it, but if it's a hole big enough that we need to try and address that.
Yeah.
Only other thing I see is that on the 129102, number 4 there, like, all the old village part, everybody pulls off on the like little gravel areas in
Oh, for
the
parking and
Yeah,
stuff?
tree apron.
do you wanna do that? So I was just gonna go section by section.
Oh, okay.
Do you
Sorry.
wanna, so I'll go
Maybe
then,
jumping ahead.
129109 disabled vehicles versus the proposed. All we did is, cause it talks about excluding agricultural equipment in a residential or commercial district, that's pretty much everything. I mean, it doesn't mention industrial, so it's like, and instead of getting semantics, I just took that out, like, it's just carte blanche across the board. And then it's concealed, you can have it in a garage or behind a fence or a hedgerow that you can't see it. But then there's the concern that someone builds a fence and now they have 50 junk cars in their backyard, so, or disabled motor vehicles in their backyard, so we put, the number shall not exceed 2. Granted, if they have a pole barn and they put them all in there, we'll never know, but at the same time, in a way, out of sight, out of mind. It's not impacting anyone. Right.
It's a tough
So are
one.
we okay with 2 on that?
No.
Are they covered if they put a tarp over it?
No, because it would not be behind the fence.
Right.
So if they just put a tarp, it's like, it's still there. Granted, if they have the tarp over it and all we can see are the tires and they have air in them, there's no other way to prove it's inoperable. So that's a little difficult, but that's something that there's no way that we have no right to lift the tarp or check under the hood or anything, so that there's no way around that one.
So I know we've had cases in the past where the city has advised people that if you cover it with a tarp or with a car cover or something like that, then you're okay. You don't have to put it in a building or behind a screen. Not very many of those, but I'm aware of at least a couple, so.
Typically, And that's the hard part, that if we see one that's all cut up, it doesn't have, you know, current license plates and things, sometimes people will go, now it's fixed. And it's like, well, did you do all those repairs in one day? So there is a way that we can say, you know, this is not gonna work, but we typically don't advise people to circumnavigate or circumvent the law by just putting a tarp on it. If someone calls and says, I know that car under the tarp is inoperable, and we go out and all we can see are the tires, it is what it is at that point. There's nothing we can do.
I don't like hedges because hedges do one thing in the wintertime. They're no longer invisible.
Right.
It's visible. Well,
Depends on what you pitch.
so I'm not sure if I like hedges as if someone puts up, you know,
What if we just say, that which are a minimum of 72 inches in height and completely opaque, scratch at the time of installation? Because if you install them and they're not opaque, you have not met that requirement. If say they're completely opaque, then by default, they would have to be an evergreen shrub in order to do it.
I'm fine with that. I'm
Okay.
fine with an evergreen shrub. I don't like hedges because I
So
don't
just-
know what people are gonna do.
So scratch out the time of installation.
Installation.
Okay.
And then finally, parking on the grass, there's two sections in the general requirements. So what it talks about in the first one is you have to have, you know, off-street parking. However, it doesn't apply to anything existing at the time this code was passed. So if you have a house, it's always gonna be a house arguably, then park all over the grass or do whatever you wanna do. I view it as, if you don't have off-street parking now, and you're required, if the code changes, you're required to have it, that's an existing non-conforming use. We can't go and say, oh, sorry, put in a driveway. So I think it's covered just from the grandfathering clause. Single-family residential lots located outside platted subdivisions are exempt from this section of the code. That's something to consider on that. And then the other one, number 4, is basically, if you're gonna do parking, it's concrete, asphalt, or pavers, is essentially what that says. So if we go down to the proposed amendment, you have to have off-street parking in with the provisions of this code. We did keep the section shall not apply to any single-family residential lot located outside of platted subdivisions. We left that in. The other one, for 4, said you need to improve the off-street parking, but then the second provision, parking of motor vehicles on dirt, grass, new gravel area, or other non-improved and or non-delineated parking area is prohibited unless no other feasible parking area exists as determined by the city administrator or their designee. And that would go to some of the old village situation where if someone has to pull off the road and it's kinda in their front yard and they say, well, where else do you want me to go? We can go out and say, you're right, there's nowhere for you to go. And I think the intent behind this is just don't just pull up right in your front yard to your front door and hop out. So I think with how unique the different areas we have in the city, I don't think there's gonna be a one-size-fits-all, but I think we have to put in some wiggle room and kind of use our own judgment in terms of what constitutes a violation of this section versus what does not. In the platted subdivisions, the only other thought would be is, because if someone has a 20-acre piece of property and you can't see their house from the road and their driveway goes in and they park in the front lawn, no one knows. And I don't want to start roping those people in that, you know, it's a farm or whatever that we're now issuing citations that it seems silly. So another thought could be that, like we did with the grass, if it's under, or all lots under 2.5 acres and, or over 2.5 acres, 3 acres, whatever, get rid of the platted subdivision, put an acreage threshold, and then go above that. That if you have an acre, you're outside a platted subdivision, but everybody's parking in your front yard, maybe that would be something we would loop in. This is kind of sliding scale in terms of how far we wanna take it. Cause I think sometimes in platted subdivisions, for example, like in Sugar Mill, I think if people started parking in their front yards, just smack in the middle, I imagine Sugar Mill, the neighbors would probably say, we're not gonna do that. But sometimes you get older platted subdivisions or platted subdivisions that are not what we typically think like a sugar mill, that it would be, oh, this is technically platted. I think might have done like 6 lot splits that requires a plat, so we don't think of it as typical like with an HOA that would loop those in, but I guess it's how far do we wanna go?
I would also, just as a small counter, like, in some of the village spots, there may be like alley access parking, which they're not utilizing, just out of convenience. Like, is that something that's gonna be a violation, or is that gonna be something that's acceptable?
I think we'd have to determine, cause some actually in the old village, their driveway is the alley.
Right.
And it's platted right away that there's nowhere else to put it, so I mean, the alley's not being used for anything else. I think there's, and that's the hard part, that it was like, oh, you could pull around and park in the alley behind your house, but.
Cause they said if there's no other feasible spot exists, then, but there is, it's just not being utilized, so is that one of those things where like the city administrator or their designee would determine it, or is that something that the inspector would determine, or what?
It typically would be the designee would be the zoning inspector. So if there's an alley parking behind someone's house, so they park behind their house, and let's say they have a fence, it's like, well, now I gotta walk around through the neighbor's yard and get up through my front door. I mean, that seems.
I know it's case by case, but
yeah.
if that's plausible, is that something that the city would look at, or?
I think it would have to be pretty, in that case, I think the parking on the grass may have to be pretty egregious, that it's like blatantly pulling up to the front door. If you're off on the side of the road, happens to be in your yard, I mean, we could look and say, well, you could park in the back, but is that really feasible to park, walk around in the neighbor's yard and do that sort of thing?
Yeah.
That it would have to be a case by case, because I think we could come up with a number of these that I think we would err on more, it's pretty egregious what you're doing, that you're violating this, pull off on the side of the road. If it's in your yard, that's fine, just don't pull right up to your front door kind of situation. Or, I mean, if there's issues of, people pulling front ways into and then backing out onto the street, things like that it would be along those lines. But unfortunately, like in researching this, there's a lot of other communities you can look at, but it doesn't really apply. So if you were to look at, Arlington, for example, they probably have a very simple don't park on your grass ordinance that makes sense. But then you take that one and try and apply it here, it's like, you can poke holes in it all day long, that it's like, there's no way we can adapt that or even tweak it to make it work, so. Yeah, that's why I added that provision that, to allow us to kind of use some common sense and judgment that, is there something else, like, if your driveway's here and you're just parking next to it, it's like, just park in your driveway, but like we said, it was like, there's no other place to park or the alley, and that's not feasible, then I think we could work with those folks to say, here's a situation that would work for both parties.
I don't see the reason we need to accommodate for people to park their vehicles in their front yard. Why? Why?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
And again, that's where I kind of wrote down time frame. I have 4 kids and 7 grandkids, and I can get 6 cars in my parking lot, but then the kids can't play in the driveway. So what I have them do is in front of a big maple tree, I have 2 of them pull, because I don't have any off-street parking.
Right.
So I have them pull in the yard right up to the maple tree. And then I have 2 other of them pull on the other side of the ditch, right there in the yard. And then the kids can play, because there's basketball hoops and things like that, and they want to ride their bikes. And everybody's cutting across. So that's my question. That would be the only time that I could see, but
it's not
I
permanent,
will,
it's temporary.
I will park my car down there for sometimes the whole weekend. I'll just park it there, because then it's out of the way. And you've seen it parked there, I mean, they'll call and, yeah. So that's, I'm just answering, so I mean, that would be the only times I could see, cause I have a 4-foot ditch in my front yard, so I cannot pull just off the side of the road.
Right, we have the same situation.
Yeah,
But as far as inoperable vehicles,
and that's a different story.
What I'm talking
That's what I was trying to figure out, what
What
is
I'm
the
talking
time frame
about
on this?
is why
Or is there?
make
For the
any
grass?
accommodation for anybody to park an inoperable vehicle anywhere.
Oh, they wouldn't.
72
Oh, I mean-
hours.
But this
period.
isn't talking
This is
inoperable here, this is just parking on grass.
Parking on grass.
Just normal like a car that you can drive
Yeah.
right in the grass. And we can put a time frame on it.
Time frame.
But as you mentioned, if I'll park it there all weekend, we're not here on the weekend.
You're not there on the, why? No, I know, but
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
if we go
saying-
by and there's like a birthday party and streamers,
Yeah, we're
We're not-
talking
That's
what,
yeah,
72
I
hours?
know, so that's what I was saying.
we could do
72
72
hours.
We could do 72 hours. The only, and this is kind of where this issue becomes interesting. Regardless of what time frame, and we don't have one, we could do 72 hours. That way, if something weird came up, we're not gonna. Although,
I have a pro and con of
if
that.
we just leave it at any time, our first step is to come give you a door hanger and say, hey, you can't park it here, you have 7 days to move it. Next step is courtesy letter, you can't park it here, you have 7 days to move it. Next step is a violation letter, 10 days to move it. Then you get mayor's court. So you're getting 24 days.
That's true.
Right out of the gate. And if someone repeatedly does a violation, we skip the door hanger, write the courtesy letter, follow that step, or follow that process again. If they do it again, it's like clearly we've gone through these first two, we're skipping the courtesy letter, we're going right to violation letter. The only thing that's difficult to address is you got 10 days to move it. Day 9, it's moved, gone day 10, day 11,
And day 11
it's
is back
right
on.
back.
That was gonna be my 72-hour thing. That's
Yeah.
where I think a time frame won't work. That's why I say I got pro and con
Right,
to it. Someone's, oh, I moved it, now I get 72 hours again.
right. The only other thing would be to add a duration, like within a
Forever.
3-month period of time if you
for
have so many
infinity.
offenses.
Yeah. And that's an interesting one to see how would we get out of a vicious cycle of someone just constantly doing that.
Right.
You just attack the convenience factor of it. 'Cause path of least resistance is the way that most things in nature goes, including people, so. Even if you said, for 72 hours in like a 30-day period, you know what I mean? Unless they wanna be persistent and just test the city, they'll put it on their calendar and move it back for 72 hours. If that's how they wanna spend their time, that's how they wanna do spend their time, but.
Maybe we don't put a time, because I don't know if we wanna restrict ourselves with that.
Yeah.
I think we use common sense, just like what you said, If someone comes and says, hey, your car's been parked here too long,
And what if
You
we
know-
do for more than, what if we shorten it to, like, maybe 24 hours within a 30-day period? That way we can play that moving game, but if you have so many days to move it, eventually it's gonna exceed that. So maybe we say we could do 72 hours, 24 hours might be, it's easier to enforce. If we go and do the door hanger and someone says, yeah, I know my cousin left this here, he's coming back next week, I'm sorry, we'll have it moved. We'll work with people. Basically we just look to say, here's the code, you gotta do it. We're not gunning to take people to mayor's court or do anything like that. So maybe 24 hours in a 30-day period. Does that seem reasonable? We could up it to 72, but then that gets difficult to track it because it's here, it's gone, and then can Steve get back by, and when does he get back by?
Can you sit there and time it?
Yeah, well, you'll be on a stakeout.
What if you just said non-permitted period, then if someone calls, complains, did you already say that?
no.
If someone calls and complains, then it's at the discretion of the zoning inspector to make
Yeah,
a
use
deal
his
out of it.
comments.
It's almost a judgment call.
Hey,
on
you know,
everybody.
they're having a party, this isn't a
Yeah, we
big
wouldn't,
time violence.
we wouldn't mess with that one. If
Right.
it was a party, we wouldn't.
It's a
Otherwise,
gathering
just
or
make
party
it,
or whatever.
Have a community
Well, I was gonna say,
you're not
her
growing
way,
grass.
anytime
And then we
he
can
drives
judge
by,
the
he sees it, he can
call.
address it.
He can address it then,
It's
yeah.
like how much
Yeah.
grass? Does this count as grass? Is more weeds than grass?
right?
Half a car in grass.
Right.
I mean, I guess the thing is, if grass is growing underneath of it, you've exceeded your time.
So should we do the 24 hours in a 30-day period?
It will grow up on the sides.
I mean, that gives us, and again, that's discretion. If someone has a party,
But no one's gonna make a complaint about a party.
I think that gives
No.
them, that puts you into the loop-de-loop.
well, that
If you
would,
just say, no, it's not permitted, period, except at the discretion of the zoning inspector, the zoning department.
I kinda agree with Ann on that one.
I do too.
the
and
only
just-
thing is we'd still have to notify and give them so many days to remove it, and that still would get us back. The thing with the 24 hours was an hour here, 2 hours there. I think most of these, it's gonna have to be pretty egregious that this car's been on this guy's front lawn for a week, he's not moving it. Or, I don't like my driveway anymore, I'm just pulling on the front lawn all the
You're gonna have
time.
ruts.
Yeah, I think I think it would have to come to that level for someone to complain, or for Steve to drive by and say, wait a minute, all week this thing's been here.
Right,
Grass growing up the tires.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that's where
'Cause they're
like
not
a
gonna
neighbor
leave it
would
at
be
the
the one
tires.
complaining.
Well,
That would be where it's like.
And that would be where he would be called and he could say, look, there's no parking allowed on the grass.
You
Mm-hmm.
have to say grass.
Move it.
Non-parking.
uh-huh.
You have 24 hours to move it, find a place for it.
Ones that don't have grass in
Oh,
front.
no.
Non-improved
Yep, I know
and
exactly
or
what
non-delineated
Said
parking
left
areas.
grass. Yeah.
That's pretty broad.
You could say, hey, I'm mowing the grass, I'm on
You
dirt.
could try them down
It's
there.
non-improved.
I kill all the
And I
grass.
I have
sprayed and kill all the grass.
I have dirt here.
Yeah.
I have dirt, I have grass, other non-improved and or non-delineated parking area. Try to make it as broad as possible, so we wouldn't get into the semantics of, well, that's all weeds. and-
That's not grass.
We've had people
That's
create
a-
their own
that's a whole-
parking spaces though.
Those are
Mhm.
flowers.
Yeah, those are flowers, you didn't mention
It's
it.
mulch.
Yeah. So,
Well, there's more to work on, but we're all tired and
yeah, well, tell you what, if you wanna think on this, then maybe we can come back and just go through and say, you know, after you have time to think about it, then we can reconvene and just say, here's our thoughts. So at least we got the ball rolling.
Okay.
next meeting is July 3rd. Is
Yeah.
that,
We moving it?
Red, white, boom night.
yeah,
But
anybody, I'll be out of town.
I was gonna miss the third too. I mean, yeah, cause
Should we move it to 10th?
we get the fifth off too. I mean, the fourth's, you know, so.
Nobody wants to be here.
Yeah, because the fifth's a Friday,
Yeah.
so most companies are giving
Right,
Thursday,
That's true.
Friday off.
that's true. So
Does
maybe
that
we
create,
should move it.
that create a problem for you if we move it to the 10th, because the BZA's probably meeting on the 9th, right?
They're moved to Mondays now, so they would
Oh.
be the 8th.
8th, okay.
Or if there's no quorum, there's no quorum. Because we adopted the schedule, we would have to switch it to a special meeting. Because the schedule was adopted.
Yeah.
So if we shift it to the 10th,
Or, and here's another question, do you have anything on the agenda at this time?
Just cancel it.
I think there's a few things coming in, but don't know for sure. Deadline is Friday. How many people are not gonna be here? So we will still have a quorum.
Someone else raise their hand.
You got a hand.
I will be working red, white, and boom that morning from 04:30 to 3.
Okay.
He might not make it out.
You might not make it. You
You
might
did
not make
use
it.
0430,
I'm
so
with
it
you.
sounds very likely you may not make it.
Might get
It
an
will be a
extra
very
day,
long
yeah.
day, and it's generally very hot.
So you just wanna move forward with the 3rd and see what happens?
We'll know by Friday.
I guess
Okay.
yes, and you guys, if there's quorum, there's quorum, if there's not, or you may not have anybody.
And that's a possibility, maybe we don't have any applications and we don't have to, cause I hate to move it, and then it's like, well, we don't have any applications,
Right.
and now we did all sorts of, here's a special meeting and advertise it this way, and I was like, oh, we didn't have to go through those paces if we didn't need to.
Yeah. So, just leave it as is,
Yeah,
and
we always talk about grass.
don't check your mailbox or whatever for the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Alright,
I do have one other thing, if I can bring it up, or just a suggestion.
okay.
With all the complaints we're having about apartments, multifamily, single family, and I don't know how hard this process would be, but, and I'm not talking about items that are, have already been, zoned but aren't built. I'm talking about already built establishments. How hard would it be to get a percentage, per school district and then overall for the city of Pataskala of what we already have in multifamily and single family apartments and houses, and maybe we want condos too. But we get so many complaints about, oh, there's too many apartments already. I don't know, cause I don't know what the percentage is.
You're saying including what's built, not just approved?
Just what's built. I don't care about approved.
Okay, well,
Oh, well.
because other people have asked that question.
I know other
What's
people
already
have
been
asked that.
approved and
I'm
not
trying to
built?
just go with what
What's existing.
is already existing and to get an idea of what percentage, because everybody's always saying there's too many apartments. I don't know, because I don't know what the percentage is for the overall city already built.
Was
I'd
that
like
part-
to know both, I'd like to know
I would
what's
too,
built
I just
and
don't know how
what's-
hard it would be to find the others.
Well,
Yeah.
was that information collected as part of the demographics portion for the comprehensive plan?
I'm thinking it might be, it's probably not broken down by school district, but we can get an overall view.
And an overall view might be nice. I just know that we get, that way when we have people coming in for either school district, it'd just be kinda nice to be able to say, we hear what you're saying, and maybe in Licking Heights, they got 30%. And in Southwest Licking, they got 5%. I don't know, I'm just throwing out numbers. But it would be kinda nice just to know what
Of course, another challenge
is already done.
with the school districts is both districts include other areas outside the city.
Exactly. No, I'm only
Yeah.
talking the city of
I
Pataskala.
think in school districts, breaking it down by that may be difficult, but we could probably get an overall view of the city as a whole in terms of housing. I know vast majority would be single family.
And that's what I'd like to know.
And then the other question, or I guess the other thing comes up is then we have too many apartments. Well, 15% of the city is apartments. Someone can say, well, that's not much. The other person can say, that's 15% too many.
Mhm.
But then it would be a judgment call from there, but we can get those demographics. We should be able to do that.
Okay. I mean, I asked that because I know my daughter, again, she's going to be a nurse practitioner, so they needed to find an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing they felt suitable enough in Pataskala, so they looked at Johnstown and they looked at Pickerington. They're gonna go to Pickerington because there isn't suitable apartments, for 2 kids and a husband. So I'm just saying, I'd like to know that percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And she did her math, she did her work, houses, my goodness, we're renting houses around here for $1,500, $2,000.
It's terrible.
You can't rent a house, and they don't wanna live in a 1-story, apartment too, or, those 3-story apartments like what we saw
Yeah.
with these others, so
It's
I
hard
just
with
would like to
kids.
know those percentages.
Okay. Yeah, we should be able to get a general breakdown of
Yeah,
housing
that would be
stock
very
within the
helpful.
city.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, if we could have that way, when people are saying, we can actually have statistics and say, truly,
Mhm.
there's this much, cause they might be right, or they might be wrong, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Yeah, we can get that for you.
Okay.
Okay, before we go on the agenda, Mr. Powell, you've been very patient. Did you want to address the commission at all, or just observing?
Just observing.
Okay, well, you're welcome.
Time to kill.
I was kidding.
You're really bored. I have a lot to say, but.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to the approval of the minutes minutes for the May 1st meeting. Everybody had a chance to review those, and are there any changes, additions? If not, I'll move that the minutes of the May 1st, 2019 regular meeting be approved as presented.
Rip got it?
Dustin?
Rip got it. Rip got it.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Rip, second. My hearing's not good this time of night. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call?
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mrs. Truax?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Anything else tonight?
No, sir. I move we adjourn.
Second. Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Roll call?
Mr. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Truax?
Yes.
Mr. Boggs?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Motion passes and we're adjourned.